Welcome to the Triple Takeover Toycast, a fortnightly podcast all about Transformers and occasionally other toy lines as well. But tonight very much is about Transformers and it's episode 90. I can't believe it. How's that? It's incredible to think that we've made it this far, but we have. And we're still enthusiastic to talk about Transformers a little bit more, which is good because we've got plenty to say tonight. Because there's a bit of a big screen film on the off, isn't there,
Silver
lads?
Screen. Oh, yeah. There we
pretty
go.
exciting.
So, Sixo, who are you? Because you don't appear to have introduced anybody again.
Well, I haven't. I haven't done that. You're right. So, I mean, what ho? My name is Sixo.
I mentioned this on the Discord. He's slowly absorbing you.
Yeah.
And just, he's just like, becoming
I'm going to
you.
start. My lawyer's going to
Quattle.
start contacting him for IP.
Your
infringement
lawyer.
soon. But anyway,
Sure.
I'm talking about Soapbox, but more on that later.
I'll look out for that email, honestly, from your lawyer.
100%.
Your legal help. That's not my catchphrase. That's just something that I say.
You've got many catchphrases.
Yeah.
I think I probably do. Yeah, it's fair to say. We also have Jason from J Swags.
J Swags. Hi, guys. Yeah, I'm here. I'm back with a vengeance. After
Back
a
with
little
a
mini
vengeance.
unauthorized mini break,
Yeah, I know.
Ooh.
I was going to say, did you submit that one to HR?
Again, sorry. Keep forgetting. So many pink slips.
I know.
Delete all. Select all, delete all.
We're recording this one on the non-normal day of the week, aren't we? Because you
That's
might
my
have
fault.
an
Sorry.
unauthorized
Yeah.
absence, which
Yeah,
is
exactly. I know.
shocking. It's thrown my whole schedule out of
My
whack,
partner
honestly.
having
I'm
her
outraged.
birthday.
I
It's
know.
absolutely outrageous. Luckily, it gave time for Liam to recover, though. So feeling
Yeah.
better, hopefully, as well. Because
That's
you're a
true.
Well,
bit poorly.
we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this one. And we've also had to recover from multiple trips to London, haven't we? Because we keep
Yes.
getting invited down there to go and see and or talk Transformers 1, which has been, I mean,
Popular
to
pod.
kick off, I know, for us, the experience of this film, you said it the other day, Liam, and I completely agree. I'm so invested in this, not just because it's a great film, and we'll get to all of that, but because of the journey that I feel like we've been on with this film a little
totally.
bit.
We're bought in.
I feel almost defensive of it, like we're
Yeah.
attached to it because
It's
we've
so
been
weird.
so involved. And I think because we've done these interviews with Josh and Lorenzo that are about to come up twice now, it's like we've got to know them and we kind of feel their passion for this film as well. But because we've been around these people talking about this film and we saw it so long ago, and it's like you've followed it in a slightly different way rather than just
Very
looking at
much
trailers.
so.
We kind of had
Yeah.
like I don't want to sound like one of them guys, but it's almost like having an inside track on something. I've been watching it from the other side of the fence and being like,
totally.
it's like you just really want it to be successful and great, because when we saw it, you got to remember, like, we all had our own views, but everyone was quite aware of what their views were, weren't they? Of like the general sort of view from the first, because the first trailer hadn't been around that long.
No, I was just going to say it's worth putting that context in that actually we first saw this film in June, which is when the first trailer had dropped not that long before, whenever it was. I mean, time is so fluid in my mind, honestly.
It was early June that we saw it, and I can date it because I went from this to go to visit my mum for her birthday, which is the 16th of June. So it was still quite early in the month, but the trailer wasn't far before that, and so it's a long time. And our reactions, it's that holding on to that, isn't it? Like, we saw it, and you could read so much stuff online that you like, a lot of positivity, but there was a lot of people saying things, and you're like, it's funny because you're like, that is not true. I've seen the film, but we were not allowed to talk about it with anybody.
It was the
obliged.
hardest thing
That was
to
difficult.
not talk about it at times. I mean, we didn't, obviously, but it was obviously we were under embargo, but it was it when you saw people.
100%.
We did. And I certainly did. Did you not?
Yeah, of course, man.
Good. But I hope so. But it was when you saw people, as you said, making assumptions based on the trailer that they'd seen, the initial trailer. And even now, I see people that have gone to see the film now that it's, out in America and everything, saying, oh my God, what was with that first trailer, And we'll talk a bit about that, I'm sure, today. But it's interesting because at the time, even when we were allowed to say what we thought of the film, people were like, I don't believe you. I had someone actually say that to me. I was like, I really love this film. And people were like, I don't believe you. And it's like, what?
I had people telling me I was wrong based on the fact that they'd only seen the trailer and I'd seen the film. When I said, "Oh, it's brilliant," and I really enjoyed it when we were allowed to.
It was mad.
And it's like people going, "Well, you're wrong because it's for this reason." Like, you haven't seen it. You don't know what it's like at all.
But I've seen this 2-minute trailer, so therefore I know. And it's like,
I've seen a poster. Great, terrific.
It was just the maddest experience, honestly, to have to keep stum through all of that. But also there were various things where you would see people making assumptions about bits of the plot or whatever it might be, and obviously having seen it, you would be like, well, not quite.
To be fair, for me, it was all right because I've been in this situation before. I think you probably have, Jason, as well. Like from working on games and stuff. Like when I was working on like the Xbox 360 and Halo 2, all these sort of these games, and you playing them, and the inside story of the development months, if sometimes years before they actually come out, and you will read people online slating them and previewing them, and say this game is terrible because of this reason, and you're like, that's not what this game is like. None of these things are like this. And they're like, this is what's happening behind the scenes on this game. It's in chaos. And like, I was at lunch with that guy. That guy hasn't left.
Yeah, totally.
Lunch yesterday, there's lots of people on the internet. This was, for me, that was my first sort of realization of what people on the internet were really like. Then kind of like people who like talking like they know what they're talking about. Like, you don't, you're not involved.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I think that's why when you were saying earlier, Liam, about like for TF1, that it's like, how invested we can feel about it is because like sitting down with Josh and talking to him about it, and he explained this is like 4 years in the making, right? And understanding that, and I know that from working in the past in animation, and the amount of love that goes into making any film, right, is huge, and the team on this film is massive. So we've been a little bit part of that journey, and I think it's kind of worth noting because that was a really unique experience for us as well. It was kind of like it was a pinch me moment for us as well, wasn't it?
It really was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. It's not like we're hanging out at press screenings every other week or anything like that.
No, we genuinely were like, when Lorenzo walked by in the bar, and we're just like, there he is. Let's just grab him for a quick chat. That was
we
brilliant.
weren't like that. You were like that. Hey, Lorenzo, can you just come over and talk about dogs with us?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's how it works.
You were talking about dogs with Josh as well. I remember.
This is how you build bonds with people.
Dogs. Dog bands.
Dogs, exactly. That's it. I remember when the trailer dropped as well, and it's worth us chatting briefly about that, isn't it? In the fact that when the trailer dropped, and I don't have the following that you guys have, but I did get one person reply to me who was just like, I think it was something like, "Are you a kid man?" or something like that. Are you like a child? And because I genuinely sort of loved B127 and his character in the trailer, and I was just like, this is just the best fun ever.
Yeah.
And his knife hands bits that then became sword hands later on. I was just like, okay, I'm just enjoying this over here in my bit. So that's fine. And that's what it was. But I think it's just that need and want for people to have an opinion on something sometimes as well, and to be part of the conversation.
Yes,
it
very
was,
much that.
It was quite a surreal experience when you've seen it and you're not allowed to say anything. That was that was tough. But we can now.
Yeah, we can now, and we're absolutely going to, baby. This is going to be so cathartic. This is like gloves are off. Here we go.
We're talking about this like, as the leaves are starting to fall. We're literally about to cross the line to October, and the film's not even still out here.
I know.
Yeah.
The whole release date thing, and for a lot of people in the UK, I can understand now, because if you if you're in the UK and you haven't seen it, you might know a lot of people that have seen it, have been to screenings or whatever, and obviously it's out in the US. So a lot of people, I think, in the UK that haven't seen it now are like, let me see the film.
I did find that a bit of an odd one in the kind of age that we're in now, in that it's not a global release,
and
it was that staggered, and I'm kind of like, all right, it's like we're back to the days of VHS,
and so far apart as well. That's the thing. It's not even like a couple of days.
It's too easy for something to be spoiled. That's the problem. So it seems a bit
like
of a shame.
the 80s with 86 movie and stuff was out in August in America and December here, isn't it?
Totally.
Not quite as extreme, but it's may as well be, really, because it's a couple of weeks away, certainly.
But let's dig into the film, right?
Well, we will. Well, firstly, we should mention, of course, that we are sponsored tonight by TFSource.com, so do go and check them out for all your Transformers and third-party needs and all of that good stuff.
Go buy some Transformers 1 toys from them.
Well, I was just going to say, they got lots of Transformers 1 toys, which I've been really enjoying as well. That's not the subject for tonight, but would like to find some time to talk about them another time, or I've done videos on them, but It's there are lots of great Transformers 1 toys, and I've been so enjoying them because of the film as well, and all of that kind of stuff. So, but we do have a Patreon as well, so you should check that out at patreon.com/Triple Takeover. If you do enjoy the episode tonight, or you've heard us before, go and check it out because there's tons more stuff on there as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later as well. But we have lots of good stuff in tonight's episode planned, don't we? Because we're finally going to cathartically talk about the film, which for us is like, finally, after
you've seen it
months,
twies, so
I have seen it twice.
That's I was going to mention that. I was like thinking earlier, it's like, am I going to remember this? I absolutely do remember this. So cool. Good. Yeah.
But we do have some, as you said, Liam, I think that we've got some interviews coming up as well with Josh Cooley, the director. We've got 2 interviews with him, 2 separate interviews, and 2 separate interviews with Lorenzo, the producer. So that is, to me, tremendously exciting. And
Lorenzo di Bonaventura.
Di Bonaventura, yeah, indeed. And to me, that's been a tremendous part of this journey as well, as we sort of said earlier. And part of the investment of the film is getting to meet those guys and just hear their take on it and everything else. So
but first, let me just say, we have interviews with Josh and Lorenzo. How freaking cool is that? Like, that's not like just like you're there. Like, we've got interviews with these guys. We'll get into that later. It's freaking cool. We got to sit down with these guys.
Do you know,
twice.
Exactly. This was the thing. The first time we sat down with Josh, and I just I think for the 10 minutes that isn't recorded was me just talking to him about animation and talking about peg bars and then dogs and that kind of stuff, and just going back. Yeah, it was brilliant. It was great. It felt very
surreal.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. But he's a fan as well. That was the thing.
He's such a fan. So, he's such a fan. The first Lorenzo chat was the most surreal for me, just because it was like, are we actually here? Is this really happening? Do you know? It was just mad, honestly. Yeah. But we'll get to all of those. We'll bring those in a little bit and everything. So I mean, guys, what did you think of the film then? We've not spoken about it, obviously, between the three of us
at all. No.
So I'm interested to hear your take, your opinions. I guess
it was amazing. I'm just going to say that it's brilliant. I loved it. It was absolutely fantastic. I will go as far straight away to say the best Transformers film.
Yeah,
the best Transformers film. The '86 movie, I love. This is a better film.
I completely agree.
Yep, I also agree, and I would add that it made me cry twice.
Well, that's a low bar.
Proper.
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah,
I think when the title came on the screen, you started crying, Jason.
Yeah.
The logo.
The poster.
Totally, I was sobbing. It was great.
When the person behind the bar asked you if you wanted a Coke or a glass of water, he was crying. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That was amazing. Oh, it was like, it had all the feels. It was, it was bringing all the vibes that I wanted. That was it. And,
Such a lovely film. It's just got such a nice heart to it. Just a really nice, lovely quality to it. I think it's so good in that regard.
Do you know what it is for me is it doesn't need to be, and I say this with the best love and respect, it doesn't need to be a Transformers movie, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be Megatron and Optimus, Orion and D16, because it's character based and it has so much character and so much emotion in it and so much story in it that you just want to explore that. And yes, it layers it up because of those characters. And it's what I've always wanted from a Transformers movie. It's a character first film. That's really what I wanted. And that's what we got. I just was grinning.
I do remember sitting next to you in that first screening. And it was quite clear that you were enjoying it. You
loved it.
As much as you were getting the vibes, you were giving off the vibes as well, let's say. Do you know
Every time I looked across, he had a big grin on his face.
Yeah.
I was loving it, totally.
Oh, it was so nice, honestly. I guess before we go any further and kind of get into the specifics, we should say, of course, that there is going to be spoilers. Like, in the interviews, less so, like I would say in the Josh and Lorenzo interviews, particularly in the first 2, I think at that point, they were very much like, oh yeah, we won't say anything spoilery, but we are, of course, throughout this episode going to be dropping spoilers. So from this point on, you're just going to have to live with it, I think, unfortunately, because we're going to say
be
stuff.
aware. Go and see it and then come back, right? Yeah,
exactly.
That's it.
Be prepared. Like Scar from The Lion King.
Yeah, very nice.
Exactly.
Very nice, Liam. Very nice.
True.
Yeah.
But no, I do agree with you. So I do think, yes, it is the best Transformers film. And that, for me, was really cemented, actually, on the second watch, if anything, because I kind of already had that feeling after
Flexing,
the first
Jason.
viewing.
Flexing.
I know he
It's
is.
not
I'm
even
not
been,
meaning
what,
to. No, there's a
15
specific
minutes
reason.
and 47 seconds.
There's a specific reason I mentioned that about the second viewing, because after the first one, right, I was like already kind of pretty much there in terms of maybe it's the best. Like I think it could be the best, but the first viewing was it's such an experience. It was like quite overwhelming because of the setting and everything as well, and getting to see it so early. So it was kind of hard to kind of divorce all of that from the film itself. If that
that does
makes
make sense. Totally.
But then, when I got to see it second time, we went to a screening that was, kind of organized by Paramount, and we gave away some tickets and things, and I got to go to that as well with a lot of the people there, and I knew some of them. Some of them were our patrons and things like this. And as soon as the film finished, I was sat in between Steve from Stevenage and our mate Nick, and the two of them are lifelong Transformers fans, same age as us, and as soon as the credits went up, they both turned and went, that was the best Transformers film ever. And it was like...
Immediate.
It was, yeah, and I'm not saying that other people's opinion informed my own. That's not my point. But it was like just everything about seeing it that second time really just bolstered it for me.
Yeah.
Of like, yeah, actually, it is as good as I thought it was. Do you know what I mean? And it stands up. And,
it's
it's
a very different movie to what's come before it. Like the '86 movie is very much a toy commercial, and that's a long-standing thing about Transformers cartoons and films, is to sell toys. This, I never ever got the impression that that's what it was trying to do.
Absolutely.
I felt like I was watching, like, I know Josh worked at Pixar, but you can feel that kind of Pixar movie vibe to it, like where it's all about heart and there's an element of humor, but the characters feel not human, but you know what I mean? They feel relatable. Real. They feel like real fleshed out characters.
Yeah.
Like I've been reading Transformers comics my whole life and cartoons. I've never felt like the relationships between these characters were fleshed out in such a short amount of time as well as here. Like I genuinely got a feel for Orion Pax, Optimus Prime, and then Megatron, and even Bumblebee to some extent. But you really got a feel for who these characters were, rather than it being centered on these are the leaders, they're doing stuff. One is a good guy, one's a bad guy, and they're fighting. Here, it's like it's a genuine relationship, and like the 2007 movie is I love that film, but I love it because it's so loud and bombastic, and it's like throwing stuff at me that I'd never seen before, like when we talked to Lorenzo, I was like the helicopter. I can't remember his name. Blackout.
Yeah.
What you love about it is seeing that for the first time on screen. It's like,
it's a spectacle.
It's the spectacle.
Exactly what it is, and that's so much of what makes that film. It's like we'd never seen anything like that, and it's incredible. But this is like, I don't want to be one of those guys who says this, and I'm going to be one of those guys who says it. But this isn't like a great Transformers film. It's a genuinely great film, and I think there's a separation there where I think anybody could watch this, even gave no craps about Transformers.
Yeah.
And they will still enjoy it because it feels like that.
So that's it. It absolutely bridges the gap. Like you don't need to be a fan to enjoy this film, right? But then again, if you are a fan, they have treated it with so much love and so much respect, and brought in so many elements of the lore. Like I am so excited about seeing it again, because I know that I'll have time, like you said, Sixo, to be able to just kind of see those moments that I missed, the layers that have been put in there, all of that part of it. But you're right, Liam. This is and with the best love and respect to 2007 movie, the Bayformers movies are far and away not my favorite films, right? And I'm not a massive fan of Michael Bay and the type of stuff that he does. That's my polite way of putting it, right? I'm not a fan of those types of films, but that's because they don't give me what I want from a film, which is story and character, right? And that's what I wanted. And Transformers 1 gave me that. They gave me characters that I can, that whole thing where you can describe Orion Pax, you can describe Elita 1, you know who they are.
You get a sense of the roundedness of the characters.
Yes.
And I do think it's what you said, Liam, is it's just a very different Transformers film to anything we've had before in that regard. I think a big part of that as well is that so much of it is centered around these two main characters. And Elita is a main character as well. Yes, B-127 is a main character as well, or supporting character, certainly. But it really is centered on the two leads, first and
their
foremost.
relationship.
Yeah, and I think what it does differently, like if you look at the 86 movie, that is a movie of scale as well, in that it's got dozens of characters. It's hard to really pin down. Obviously, Hot Rod, whatever is the main, but it's hard to pin down like where the focus is at times. Do you know what I mean? And because so much happens within the space of 90 minutes. It's just it's
madness.
Ridiculous film, really.
so
like I love it.
yeah.
I love it. But it's
action
ridiculous,
extravaganza.
It's very much of its time as well.
To the next
exactly.
Totally,
and I love that film, and I can't say much bad about it, or really anything bad about it. We've talked about it endlessly in episode 50, so go and listen to that, But the point of that film is that so much of it is wedded in with nostalgia and everything as well, and all of that. But it's the scale of it, and you don't get a lot of character time. You do get some, of course, and there are some really great character beats, but this is all about the character. It puts it first and foremost, and the action and everything else going on serves that first. That's the ultimate bit. That's the point of this film, is these two characters and their relationship. And I think that is so different to what we typically get in Transformers, where that character work is sort of sacrificed a little bit for the plot or for the action or whatever it may be. And I just thought the result was tremendous.
Yeah, and I was thinking when we came away from this, I was thinking about it, comparing it to the other films, and I was thinking of Bumblebee. That's always the one I do, and I know a lot of people, they go back to it as that's the better one of the live action movies because it centers on the characters and stuff. And I was thinking about it, compared to this, and it's like, they're so different, because that movie, it really focuses on Charlie. She's the character.
Yeah, it's a human.
Whereas Bumblebee is still like a child in that film. You know what I mean? He's more beep, boop, boop, boop. He's almost like a puppy. And he doesn't really develop as a character. It's more about the moment he gets his memories back and the other guys help him. And none of the Decepticons, they're all great, but they're not fleshed out characters, and in the same way.
So it's a really good way. It's a really good way to look at it.
But here they are, and that's what I mean. Like the difference between Orion and Megatron, they have a genuine relationship that builds throughout the film, and then the same with Elita 1 and Orion, and even with D16 and Megatron or whatever. But then you introduce Bumblebee and stuff, and he's very smart with what Josh does here. Is he centers it on a small cast. Because if you look at all of the Transformers films, if you go to the fans, they'll go, well, this movie has this cast, and it's this team. But then most of those characters say one line or do one thing, or they appear for a moment, or they're just in background. And it's like, they're not the characters that you have to make a leap with yourself. You have to be like, well, Ironhide is probably off to the side doing all this other stuff. Yeah. Rather than just that bit when the dog wheezes on him and he gets mad, and you know what I mean. And it's like it's like that bit always makes me laugh, and I don't mind Ironhide in the films, but I would. It's not really much of a character, you know what I mean?
No, it's not.
No, it's
but these guys are.
Yeah. It was funny watching people after we'd seen it. Obviously, it was funny watching people kind of go nuts, seeing little snippets and clips and trailers and things, and going, "Oh my god, look! There's Ironhide, there's Jazz, there's Brawn, there's these guys." There's Red Alert, and like finding like the blurriest background screenshot of obviously, yes, they are meant to be those characters, but they're
part of it.
Yeah, they're part of the mix. They're part of the scenery in a way. Like they're
not Easter eggs.
Yeah, exactly. They're Easter eggs. Exactly. That's exactly what they are. They're not characters as such. Jazz has a couple of speaking lines in it. And
they're there to move the plot with
exactly that.
The context of what this group are doing.
Yes, they're part of the ensemble, and the background.
They build out
really,
the world.
Yeah,
that's more what they do.
Yeah. It's so true. And you get, if you are a Transformers fan, of course you have that sense of like, well, these are the robots that are going to become Optimus's troops, and this and whatever else. There's a couple of Decepticons that get a little bit more kind of focus or screen time, like Shockwave and Soundwave and those guys. But by and large,
steal the scene.
But it's still all in service of D16 and Orion or Optimus and Megatron.
Yeah.
is the thing. So
do you know what it does is it's like it's like theater, right? Where it's got this core cast of characters. That's on stage that you're looking at, and you've got all these other amazing people doing stuff around that are adding to the atmosphere and the feel and all that.
That's a really good analogy.
And that's great filmmaking, right? Because filmmaking is theater. And that's what Josh did so well in this film. And it just saying that out loud is giving me goosebumps, right? Because it takes me right back to the moments in the film that I loved for that as well, where I'm watching Orion Pax and D16's characters develop and their relationships develop, and then kind of off the side going, oh, there's Jazz. That's cool.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's exactly it, because you said earlier about how there's lots of bits of lore and stuff, from other Transformers series, but that's not what the film is about. That's there, but it's like it's taken the ingredients and made a completely different cake out of it. And that's what I love about this film. It's like the focus isn't on, oh look, there's this reference to something or something else, or this story beat. It's all, what are these two characters doing and where are they going? What's their emotional journey? How is this bond developing and then ultimately breaking? That's always what the plot is focused on. It's not like, oh, here's this guy, you remember this guy, look how cool he is.
Yeah, totally.
It never pulls the lens away to give you like this awesome super moment, like, oh, look, like when Dreadwing pops up, there's no like, oh, he's mugging it off to the camera. He's doing something in service to the storyline here, and there's so much of that. And it's, oh man, I think what it is as well, like, just to further that, it is the fact that there are these things we recognize, but it's all new. It feels a lot like
it's so new.
Car Robots for the first time, or Armada, something where you saw it and you're like, I recognize these things. They're in different places and it's a different world I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's been, the deck has been reshuffled a little bit, hasn't it? It's like they've taken all the same cards and just delivered it in a slightly different way.
That's really impressive as well.
Yeah,
you know,
and
that's
it's never
so
a retread. It feels like something wholly new. It doesn't just feel like, oh, like, say, I don't know, the War for Cybertron games is an example. I like those. I love those, but they are retreading a familiar territory. You know the characters, the stakes, who they are, what they're doing. This isn't that entirely. It's something wholly new with things you know. So it's like familiar but new, and I love that. I think
one thing and again, backing up your point, one thing I was really grateful for, just as an example, was that there was at no point dialogue quoted from the 1986 movie, right? Like we've had that, and that's been done, and that was cool when that happened in the 2007 movie. You know, where they were like, "One shall stand, one shall fall," all of that. Great. Like I enjoyed that at the time, and you know, a little bit of fan service, fine. I think if you'd have put that into this, it would have been so distracting and just felt like it was dragging it off somewhere else, you know?
But it's also not part of that timeline yet, because this is before all that.
It doesn't feel like fan service, any of the references. You know what I mean? Overly, like, where it's just there to make you go, oh, like, I remember when it first started and when they get on the train and you saw Red Alert and stuff, and I remember looking at you guys and being like, remember this, because that's just going to be a background reference for us for later. But it's not, because they then appear later organically as part of the cast.
Yeah, it's not just a one nod. I mean, there are little bits, like there's the Optimus jump. You know, at one point when he's fighting Sentinel Prime, he does do the jump from the movie. But again,
you never feel like it's being thrown in your face.
No, exactly. It's a blink and you miss it kind of thing. It doesn't make or break the film in any way. So I think it's all done with a kind of loving, guiding hand. And it's applied in such a sort of subtle way, but as you said, Liam, the story is still paramount.
But the thing is, it's like, story isn't just, you know, character goes from here to here. It is character, right? And it is you invest in character, and you want, and this is like, as a writer, this Transformers 1 is such a great opportunity, isn't it, to really dig into, okay, well, what is Optimus's and Megatron's origin story really, and where can this take us? There are so many, you know, just we could have an entire podcast about that, about where we could take that, right? And what happens. And that seed, as a kind of brief, if you like, is just a great thing to grab hold of and go, okay, where are we going to take this? What can we do with this?
I think it's been done so well as well. I mean, you mentioned about like, oh, it's kind of comes before, you know, some of the other films, things like this. I think the point is that it could be whichever continuity you want it to be, really. Like if you know, it's kind of malleable enough. But it also doesn't have to be any of those things.
Yeah,
like it can just be its own thing.
Yep.
And I think, you know, for me, the origin story has been done before in different media, you know, never in big screen films, fine. But there's something about this that feels so fresh, and it's sort of almost startling that we're 40 years into this franchise and this is the biggest origin story of them all, right? Like this is a, you know,
that's the bit I love. That's really amazing.
Like it has been done, and in many ways, it's what we were saying before, though, Liam, is that like none of the ingredients here are new necessarily. Like the 13 Primes thing, Primus, you know, all of this mining has been done. You know, the elements are all kind of there, but it's just the way, again, the deck is shuffled or the cake is baked or whatever you want, you know?
Totally.
It's been reserved, you know?
The Quintessons is effectively like the Sopranos as gangsters. Extorting the planet.
My goodness.
I really loved all of that,
Oh, that was, how they were visualized, how you saw how you saw them, the effect that they're having. And it was, and the thing was, it would have been quite easy to make them a bigger part of this film, right? And actually, they were, they didn't get that much screen time.
Basically,
in the grand scheme
one
of things.
scene,
being saved for it's setting up a future, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
What's going to happen next and that kind of thing. But that whole part of it just made the world bigger, the potential bigger. And that, again, is what's exciting about Transformers 1.
You think about how many times we've seen Cybertron over the decades. It's such a mainstay. And in this movie, when they emerged to see it for the first time, I felt like I was looking at something new. It's like I was with them, almost like you feel their journey. If they get up to the surface, what's it going to be like? And in my head, all the way up to that point, I was like, I know what Cybertron looks like. I'm well aware. I've seen it a million times. And then when they came out onto it, I genuinely felt what they felt looking at it, like, wow, this is new, different. It's a different beast. It's a completely, and I think that's the thing with his characters in this film is it's like it, but it's showing you something different through a different lens, and it's really interesting in that film.
The depiction of Cybertron is a good example, really. It's kind of a good demonstration of exactly what we're talking about, because I think, and we talked with Josh about this in the first interview that we're coming up soon, but I think the fact that he and the filmmakers obviously didn't feel beholden to portray Cybertron in a very traditional way that we've already seen on screen. And the reality is that Cybertron has looked hugely different in pretty much every continuity that has existed out there over the last 4 decades. But they've chosen to go a very different route altogether with it. The kind of underground bit is beautiful and kind of mechanical, and it's got skyscrapers coming down off the roof, basically, or so, like, do you know what I mean? It's just
so
no
up or down.
Exactly, it's just mad to look at. Like, I've never seen anything like it, really. But then the as you say, the surface again is a whole other kind of semi-organic element that is just bizarre and like a bit Beast Machines-y and whatever. And it's just cool. It's just something that adds that element of mystique to it and intrigue, and I want to see how it develops. And I thought some of Josh's theories for why it is the way it is were really cool, even if they're not
Cooley
sort of evident in the film itself, if that makes sense.
I
just want to say, like, you've heard me talk many times about how much I don't like organic Cybertron whenever it's like shown in comic stuff. I really hate it. But here it was a different kind of thing, because I felt like the planet was alive. It's the metal that's moving about rather than, it's not like just rocks and that kind of thing, like in IDW2 when they're like, oh, Cybertron now is a rock for some reason. You're like, why? This, it's like living metal, and something has obviously been going on to cause this kind of strange surface. And like you say, Josh is like, what is his theory as to why it's like that, rather than it just being like, well, it was a rock that somehow became metal later. No.
Yeah. Well, should we bring in Josh at this point?
Yes, I think we should
get his some words from the man himself. So, I mean, we were so lucky to sit down with him, realistically, because his time was so precious and whatever else. But we did get a good bit of time to chat with him, and he was so friendly. And Jason obviously charmed him about dogs, so that absolutely helped. And then we got him chatting. So I think we're going to cut to that now. This interview is from back in June when we first saw the film, so it's from a little while back when it wasn't finished yet. And he was obviously hadn't been seen by a general audience, so do bear that in mind. But we'll go straight to Josh. So I think we're good to go. Just basically, we run a Transformers podcast called Triple Takeover. We've had on lots of guests. We've had Hasbro on before and comic creators and stuff, but we were really
specifically Transformers.
Have a listen. Other toy lines. Doing other ones.
He does
if you look us up, we're on like YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all of that.
You guys all look familiar, so I'm sure over the last 5 years I was on this project, I've been Googling Transformers specific stuff, and I'm sure I watched an episode or two at some point.
Maybe so.
We've seen our faces in front of our collections, or
maybe so.
Yes, totally.
So, we are the nerds. We have our land there.
Shelves full of transforming robots. I've had a lot of shelves. My parents owned a toy store for like 50 years.
Really?
No
way. The dream.
So that's why I was like Toy Story 4 naturally.
Yeah, of course.
And then so I was Transformers. I had obsessed with toys.
Well, this is the kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So that's about
great.
Oh yeah.
But and then you say, so they're all
I just got the Robosen one
Oh, nice.
Did you? The Megatron.
Optimus or
the Optimus one? No, it's the Megatron one. It's crazy.
He got a ton of video on it. Yeah.
You know, it's so cool when you showed us when you did the video of it, as it transforms, the Decepticon logo spins round.
It does
as part of the transformation.
It's super cool because it's the front of the tank. So the chest slides up like that. But of course, because the Decepticon symbol is that way down, so it flips upside down to go to the front of the tank. It's very cool. Good. And the head spins round as he transforms and everything. It's very cool.
Swings the
that is terrifying. I mean, that is, so I had it on a desktop, to record a video of it, obviously. And you sort of say, okay, do this thing, and it starts swinging that mace around. And you're literally there like, oh God, like this, like hoping it doesn't go off the table or something. It was absolutely terrifying.
I called my kids in. I'm like, kids, say hello to your brother.
So good. That's brilliant.
My son now, the only thing is that when we get like a traditional transformer, he's like, it doesn't do its own. It doesn't do it. Transform it.
I've got to do my hand.
Do all this work. Well, actually, I mean, funnily enough, just looking at our questions and everything, that was kind of where we wanted to start with you, if it's okay. It was like your personal kind of love of Transformers or where you kind of got to, with the brand, as it were.
In a weird way, this movie became full circle for me because I grew up watching the animated one every Saturday morning with a bowl of Captain Crunch.
Yeah.
And then I had toys as well and went to the 1986 movie in the theater.
I was going to ask.
And maybe we shouldn't talk about that.
Yeah, too dramatic. I know.
At 19 minutes, 21 seconds into the movie, something happens. And I was just as, distraught as everybody else at that time.
I cried.
But that feeling that I had, or just the joy of watching that cartoon and going like, this is nuts, and the toys and seeing what they can do. I wanted to capture that somehow for this film. And so that was like my goal, was that letting that feeling kind of come through.
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, we were talking before actually and saying, I mean, you mentioned about obviously the death of Optimus Prime in the 86 film. Sorry to bring it up. I know it's dramatic. But in a weird way, we were sort of wondering if that had never happened in that original film, if Transformers would still be such a thing. Because obviously, people. Well, this is it, and it is for so many creators as well. And you're not the only one that has sort of come into adulthood with that memory of it. And if
that's a fantastic thought, I'd never thought about.
If they hadn't have killed him off, would it still be that
sort of as impactful?
Yeah,
because we were talking about the fact that it just Optimus Prime gets reborn. So many times, and that's what kept that going.
That's the memory that lives in pop culture now, is that death. And I think that's why it's stuck with kids way more than He-Man or any other thing. Because they all remember that it has that one major moment. And I think it...
Well, there are... I can't spoil.
Yeah.
But you guys know what I'm talking about. There's some...
Well said.
There are so many fantastic references and little characters and things in the background. Like, what was it like for you being able to put all those in? Were you just excited and putting this guy in?
Here's the thing: it wasn't just me; my entire crew.
Right,
the entire crew. Like just trying to think of an example. There's so many, but like I had a story. All the animators at ILM would fight over which character they could animate because they loved it so much, and they would suggest. Like some of them were just deep into the lore and would suggest things that were like, great, put it in there. Something as simple as like the throne that's in the movie. The shape of that is similar to the
84. Yeah,
yes,
totally. Yeah, I noticed that.
I had to be like very cryptic. The most like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
No, we spent most of the movie going, it's him. No,
there was a bit, on the train. So when you can see in the background, there's a Jazz and there's Ironhide, and you can see like maybe RC's leg or Alita's legs,
right?
And then you give me a tap. And then, but didn't realize that they were going to see, there's more as the as well.
Yeah. Well, it's such a great cast of characters, and it's so they're so different and unique. And the hard thing actually was how do we not just go crazy?
Yeah,
because the relationship between Megatron or Impax and D16 was the most important thing. I was like, I need to hold on to that and make sure that every decision is supporting that story.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it becomes just like fan fiction.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that was the clear thing, and that even somebody who's not a super fan can come in and watch this film and go, oh, I get it. I get who these characters are.
Yeah.
But that was the thing that was great about it, though, as well, and the fact that it is a character. It's what I've wanted so much within Transformers, kind of Hollywood's movie, is to have a character-based film. And it's nice to say that you're saying about the Transformers cartoon as well, and the fact that emotion that comes out of the eyes and everything, which brought everything to life and really helped you engage with them, which is why emotionally it really gets with you as well. So then that balance between like Orion Pax and D16 and building out that, was that a real challenge as you were building out those characters?
Well, to me, that was the whole movie. Like that's everything is about that. So the fun thing, I'd say, is a challenge, but also I was really looking forward to it, is everybody knows that they're villains or that, not that they're villains, that they're antagonistic and that they're enemies. Yeah. And even people who aren't as familiar with the franchise still knows Optimus and Megatron are goody, bad. Yeah. So with that expectation, it meant a couple of things. In order to show them as friends, it can't just be I'm a good guy, you're a bad guy. It needs to be like they are on the same page. They get along great, but more importantly, the audience has to like seeing them together. Yeah. And that way you go like, oh, now I know why they're friends, why they're brothers. They really enjoy each other's company. And what I loved about that idea is somebody coming in fresh wouldn't know who's going to be the bad guy or the good guy there. So it allowed Megatron to have a really nice arc as well. And I talked with Brian Tyree Henry about that a lot, about how to. I knew he'd be able to do it from day one. He's an amazing actor.
So good, but to get that balance of it moving over.
But just going from super charming and believable and kind of annoyed with Orion, but loving him at the same time, and then having him gradually turn into what we know he's going to become, not because he's decided he's a bad guy, but because he thinks he's doing the right thing. Yeah. And that I thought was a really fun challenge, that it was like, I want to see these worldviews between these two characters based on what happens, see that their philosophies start to tear their relationship apart, which is tragic.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. I thought it was interesting that you had Orion sort of almost pushing that, was the catalyst of that by being, kind of going off the rails and doing things that he wasn't supposed to be doing, and really pushing D16 to a place where he wasn't comfortable. Along, wasn't he? He was,
yeah. There's something kind of ironic and tragic about that too. It's like he's creating his own worst enemy in a way.
Yeah. And as you see that unfolding as well, is that why then, so having a character like B127 as well for that kind of juxtaposition to this, it brings that.
Yeah, so that he's experiencing the world almost like from the, like a child. Yeah. I wanted to make sure he didn't feel like he was a little kid the whole time, but he is innocent, and Keegan can do anything, and it's hilarious. But having be kind of, he's literally down in the toilet of the planet, and be pooped on by constantly, and to have him be brought up and be like, wow, that's just a fun character.
It was amazing. And so on that as well, when you were developing that character, like the moment where like Shockwave gags him, and was this all scripted in there as well? But was there any bits that they kind of came out when you were directing the cast?
Well, we have countless hours, probably literal hours of Keegan just riffing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
Because I worked with him on Toy Story 4, and I loved how I would bring up an idea and he would just go off on it, and then I just sit back and try not to make a noise so I don't interrupt the take. But I'd be thinking of other things as well, just to kind of, how can I prompt him and kind of send him in a different direction? Yeah, but he's so good about staying on track with the story that it became, it just became a joy to watch. But he's natural at it. So is Chris, which surprised me. I didn't know what to expect. He's hilarious. Yeah, and a lot of the looseness and that charm of Orion Pax early on in the film is just purely him. It's like there was lines there, but he pushed him even further.
Yeah, and it really worked.
So it was one thing we actually did when the trailer dropped. We did a podcast episode about that and trying to look at it. One of the things we were talking about is with Peter Cullen being such a famous voice for Prime, and then Chris coming in and doing that as well. Yeah. It's like, is he going to do an impression of this as well? But
he made it his own.
He made it his own.
Yeah, that's where I've seen you guys before. It was about the trailer. Yeah. He definitely did, but that was something that I was conscious about from day one, even before we had Chris. Like, Peter Cullen's voice is Optimus. Yeah. It is Transformers. Yeah. And that is no doubt iconic. And, there's no way to replace that. Yeah. Trying to replace that. It's Orion Pax. How do we build up to that? Yeah. And one thing that was really fascinating, the first recording session, Chris and I were talking about it. We were playing around, and he was doing the looser version up front. And by the time we got to the lines at the end of the script, he stood up a little straighter. Yeah, right. And he had the cadence of it. Yeah. He wasn't trying to do an impersonation. He just had like the tone and the cadence of the voice, and I got chills. Yeah, like I literally had goosebumps.
So you could hear it really at the end. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and he said, but he didn't tell me he was going to do that. Right. And I said, "Well, hold on, what are you doing? What was that?"
Brilliant.
And he's just like, "Yeah, man, let's try something." And I was like, "That was great." Yeah. And let's work with this. Let's see what happens. Yeah. And we just bounced off each other, but he was.
It was very clear, very quickly. Like, there was never a moment where I watched it taking it with somebody else doing the voice. It just suited the character. Yeah. Sometimes when roles get taken on by new people, it can take a little while for you to disassociate from the voice. Optimus Prime's been done by so many people over the years. Anyway, but this, straight away since it started, there was never that question. And I thought the way he brought it to life was just so nice. Because it was nice to see an Optimus Prime where he is young and he's kind of wide-eyed of the world. Like when Bumblebee comes on, you get to see it from the point of a viewer. Right. That world. And it was the same with Optimus, because normally he's really battle-weary and sad at this point.
Exactly.
And here it was like, he's got so much life and energy, and it's such a nice new side to the character.
It took time to find that balance, because I want to make sure he wasn't too dislike what he's going to become. Yeah. Not too like young or like, so you're like, who's that character?
Yeah. Too naive.
Yeah. But not too close to one that's already Optimus Prime. So it's finding that balance was a trick.
I think you got it.
Thank you.
It's also Alita as well. Yes. He's a kind of critical character, Yeah. And again, I remember in the trailer, so nice to have a film that has a strong female character in it that has, the purpose,
Absolutely.
And she's great. And how the relationship she has with Orion, where she just keeps him, different role, as part of the story.
Well, it's part of the lore too, when he goes to, depending on which version, there's so many different versions. Why am I telling you?
We know.
But she stays back, and she's the leader of the Autobots on Cybertron for a while. So it naturally felt great to have her brought forward a little bit more than
she's a real fan favorite as well. There's a lot of people that really respond very positively to the character because of what she represents, and the fact that she was introduced in 1985, where you didn't really get a lot of that kind of female representation in that kind of role at that time. So I mean, that was actually one thing that we wanted to ask you about, was about some of the influences that went into this, because it's quite clear you've got stuff like Arachnid from Transformers Prime in there, and the Veacons from Transformers Prime, which when that came out in the trailer, people were like, hang on a minute, what? So I guess we were just interested. We'd read that you obviously were given a Bible of sorts.
So I say Bible just based on the amount of information. How long it was. But it was like a PDF they sent me that was just, here's the timeline, here's all the different kind of versions, and it's just kind of a collective Transformers as a brand kind of thing. And there's so much that I thought I knew it really well, but I did not. There's so much in it.
I don't think you can know it all.
I'm sure there are a lot of people that do, but I wanted to stay true to all of that. We couldn't put it all in the film, obviously, but the great thing is the character designers we had, Amy Beth Christensen, which you should definitely get her on your podcast.
Okay.
She designed a lot of our characters here, and the thing that blew me away is that she also designed them one for one, so they actually transform into their vehicle.
That's so cool.
As if it was a toy.
Amazing.
Wow. And I was like, could that be possible? I don't know. I didn't know if you'd have to do some camera tricks or something.
Not always the case. Yeah.
But every single one of them transformed one for one, and she figured that out.
Wow.
And she is such a huge fan.
Yeah.
And so, they were using references from all throughout Transformers for different characters, even references I didn't know.
I was going to say,
awesome.
I mean, are there bits of it that beyond, the kind of original series that you are a particular fan of, or that you kind of were interested to bring to it?
I was, I grew up watching it in the 80s, and into middle school, and just it's that thing where I love what I grew up with.
Yeah, of course.
And so I know there's stuff all through the 90s, Beast Wars and everything.
Yeah.
But I never really watched it because I'm like, that's awesome, but this is the one
absolutely. Yeah, so that's my soul of it.
Yeah. So, but I love that they were able to, my crew was able to bring over the love from every different version and wherever they were in that timeline of growing up and put that into the film.
That's amazing. It does come across like that. I mean, obviously some of the portrayal of Cybertron was really interesting because that is not necessarily the traditional Cybertron.
Well, that's what got me into this movie. One of the things was that the Cybertron is usually dying or gray and falling apart, which forces them to leave. And we're like, well, they're not leaving yet.
Yeah.
But also Cybertron is so important for the story. Like, that's what's at stake.
Yeah, totally.
They're having a war for their planet. So it's got to look awesome.
Yeah.
It's got to look alive. It's got to have character to it. It's got to be someplace I want to go as an audience member. Check it out. And I want them to be like theme park. You know what I mean? I wanted to go visit that.
But it was the fact you put organic matter into that on the surface as well, which kind of blew my mind as well.
Well, I didn't want it to just be a silver ball.
Yeah. Right.
It needed to, knowing that it would also transform itself as natural as we have wind or waves. That would be really cool too.
Yeah.
There's one of the things. The natural matter. The idea behind that I can't remember the name of it right now. It's a theory that on meteors and comets there could be life from other planets that came crash here and start to grow.
Yeah.
And so that's why on Cybertron it's happened on the backside of the planet.
Okay.
So there's the terrain of Cybertron actually also represents the story of their relationship. So when they first get to the surface, everything's beautiful and clear. The relationship between Orion Pax and D16.
Yeah.
And then as the story continues, it gets more rugged.
Yeah.
And then it's to the point where it becomes jungle. And that's where they're at their, the hardest to navigate. And also, this is a very subtle thing, but where the Decepticon camp is, there's these huge, divots that are, splaying up. And the idea is, that's where comets would have hit. Okay. And super hot. And the metal would have gone like that and then just immediately cooled. And froze that way. So that's where... There's a lot of backstory.
Yeah, that's cool.
Really interesting.
Even then, it was like the way that there's the color grading that you've done through the film. That when you're an icon and then on the surface, which was really subtle, and then that all came together at the end as well, but created such a lovely atmosphere that we hadn't seen in the Cybertron previously.
Thank you. Yeah, the art team that I got to work with is just that they're extremely talented.
It shows. Yeah, it's amazing.
Was it quite exciting and thrilling then to be able to add your own lore and sort of ideas to this whole, because this franchise has been going for so long, there's so many different takes, and you've created something brand new that is, I know it's influenced by older things, but it stands on its own as something completely new and exciting. And it must have been quite a thrill to be able to do that. Yeah,
I pinch myself. It's like there are times when talking with the animators about, let's have him go over here and his thrusters become flamethrowers. They turn into kids playing with the toys again.
It's totally amazing.
It's just so much fun. I love Optimus grabs a guy and then transforms and rips him in half in the process. That's so much fun.
That was one thing I was watching it, and I don't know how up you are in some of the newer cartoons and stuff, but there's the Earthspark cartoon that's out at the moment where there's a big focus in the animation for that, with them transforming during fights and stuff like this.
Oh, good.
And it's something that I really noticed in this film that you do a lot. They're constantly flipping back and forth between the modes.
In the race as well.
Well, the first thing is that they're not robots in disguise.
Yeah.
There's no reason to be in disguise, so they could transform whenever they want to if they need to, if they have the ability to. So the other thing is they're Transformers. This is a Transformer movie. So knowing that we're going to have a race, I was like, I need this race to be a race that can only be in this movie. Yeah. So the race, they have to transform in order to get through it. The fighting styles of it, I was like, it was brought up, maybe we get a fight choreographer to come in and have people plan it out. And we started to do that and I realized that's the opposite of what I want. I don't want this to be two people fighting. I want this to be two Transformers fighting.
Yeah.
And so it's a totally different approach. And every single move is about how do you transform to dodge out of the way?
Yeah.
Or how do you transform in order to attack? And so everything is, I wouldn't be so specific that it could only happen in this movie.
Yeah. I think that's brilliant and a lot of fans will love that. Because honestly, like I think a lot of fans feel they don't see enough of that in a lot of Transformers media.
It is only just two people fighting.
Yeah.
Not the robots. And so in this, it was nice to see them actually use all the parts and stuff. Like the flamethrowers was brilliant.
It was.
But the whole fight's like that, twisting and turning. It's not something normally seen. It was just really exciting.
Yeah. I'm aware we have to wrap up, but last question. What do you reckon 11-year-old Josh would think of Transformers 1?
11-year-old Josh. Oh, I'm 11-year-old.
Yeah, that's okay.
I don't know what I'm saying.
Perfect.
Amazing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Great.
So that was Josh having words of wisdom there about the inspiration behind it. And this is the bit, right, for me, where I started welling up because Cybertron. Yeah,
again.
Honestly. Again, all the time. I was like, what?
In the interview this time.
Not in the interview, no.
Mid-interview.
It was during this, the visuals of Cybertron and seeing it. And I absolutely love that moment where they're I was with them. That's when I knew the characters had worked for me and that I'd been drawn into the film, because I was on that little floaty train thing with them when they were looking out there, and it looked beautiful, it looked stunning, but it wasn't me watching a film at that point.
You were just into it.
And when Josh explained the kind of thinking behind Cybertron and where they were coming from, I was like, oh, that makes more sense now, because it had a rationale behind it and it had a reason behind it, which I thought was lovely.
Lorenzo had a great point in the second interview we do with him where he talks about that the way Cybertron looks, doesn't he? It's like it's hard to quantify what it is, and I got exactly what he was saying, because it's that same thing. You look at it and you're like, it looks amazing, and I can't quite pinpoint what about it is. It's like there's almost like a twinkly sort of artistic vibe they've gone for to it, and it's like it's glowing, but it's not like we've seen many times before, like glowing. It's almost like the whole thing is alive, and it's really hard to pinpoint. Almost like it's, I don't know, visual sherbet. That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, but the fact that like you said, Liam, that it's alive. That's it. That whole concept idea is. Well, that's also part of the
lore,
but
it's like the air's alive as well. Yeah, you know what I mean?
It's so well done and very subtle, and could be it could do the opposite. Actually, done badly, that could just completely remove you from the moment and not work as well. Because I think Lorenzo mentions about the fact that it's like, you know, it's such a massive, imposing the idea of Cybertron, and it's difficult to comprehend and all, and how it's been, I suppose, as well, how it's been represented in the other films and stuff like that. But it was that different take on this one as well.
Absolutely. I don't know if either of you have seen it, but there's the production designer for this film, actually, Jason Schreier, is on X or Twitter or whatever as well, and he's just shared some of the kind of concept art they did of Cybertron. Have you seen this, Jason?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah?
It's stunning.
I mean, that as well. I love all of that stuff, and I love that they're starting to share this stuff now. And you know, some of it actually is kind of what was like with one of the first images that we saw of of Transformers 1, like with this kind of silhouettes of the robots and everything. But it's just absolutely gorgeous, and I think it's really shows that they wanted to create something that was just out of this world, alien, and the kind of, as you were saying, Jason, that the characters would get that sense as well. You know, that when they first went to the surface, that it would feel completely different from anything they'd seen. And I guess, you know, thinking about their origin and all of this, I did think as well this really worked with them all being, you know, miners. And oh man, people need to stop making that joke online. You know, if you see it's like everyone's making the joke, oh, they're miners, you know.
What, like one of them is going to be called Morris?
No.
Like Morris,
no.
Like a
they're
Morris
underage. They're underage is the joke, you know. But it's like, yeah, it's one of those where, like, now you know, any comment about them being minors and someone in the replies is like, oh, minors, you know, it's like, yeah, okay, the joke's done, but it's played out,
typed out, so it's spelt right.
Yeah, I know.
That only works if it's said out loud.
It's done now. I'm over it. It's played out. It's you know. Anyway, But I really like that as an origin for them, and I think the whole kind of them being underground, not being able to transform,
action
them being
masters.
suppressed. They are action masters. Yeah,
that's it, exactly.
The action
Maybe
is
that's why it
alive.
appeals. Maybe that's why it appeals.
Or Creos. Yeah, action masters. Yeah.
Action masters.
Yeah, that's better.
Blockies. They're all blockies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so good, and it's so different to the kind of classic origins that we often see as well. I mean, I think we talked about this back when we first saw it, but the fact that, Megatron. Well, firstly, that Megatron is typically like a gladiator or something in the kind of classic.
I was so happy they didn't do that.
Origins. I'm really happy they didn't do that. I think it worked really well for this film. Like, I do like that origin originally, but
he's not a bully, and I love that here because
exactly.
It's so often they fall back on this depiction in comics and cartoons with Transformers. It's always Megatron is way bigger than Optimus, and Optimus is the David versus the Goliath, and it's like. We've seen that so many times.
That's the point. We've seen it. Yeah.
It's a different take this time. They're coming from the same space, the same place. Sorry, as well, and they're like they're buddies. They're in the mines together, working together. And it's like building that relationship.
It's a different journey for him. Like for Megatron, he's not a bully. He's genuinely a guy who's just been so affected by some things that have happened to him. And it's funny because it's like with Megatron, he turns into Megatron through Prime. It's pushing him out of his comfort zone from a place of love, trying to get him to change, who they are and their status.
Expand his horizons.
Exactly. Go and see the world. And then, obviously, Megatron is so crushed by Sentinel, these things turn him into who he is. Whereas it's the reverse with Prime, where Orion becomes Optimus due to almost entirely Megatron's kind of violence.
Megatron,
because
absolutely.
It's part of his journey.
It's reactive,
He's still behaving as Orion. He's just gained the ability to transform. The Prime part comes from how he responds to his friend going over the edge and attacking him, and then he's like, "I'm going to stand up for everybody else and push my friendship back." And I think that's really interesting switch between the two.
Someone online pointed out that in many ways, Orion creates Megatron and Megatron creates Optimus. It's the sort of the bond between them is such that they both react from each other.
But it needs that trio for that to work. That push, and I love that idea that it's actually not Prime that's or Orion Pax that's responsible for kind of D16's change, and it's the betrayal. Of Sentinel.
It is, but he blames Orion for it as well. This is the thing,
because he's party to it. He's like this. This wider kind of the fakeness of it, and this lie that he's been living.
But we're so used to Megatron being this agent of change. He's always there as a revolutionary. It's him. He's there like a poet or various things. His whole idea is he wants to change his lot. In this, he doesn't. He's very much a.
That's true.
That's very true.
Stop dragging me into your bullshit.
Totally. Yeah, stop trying to kind of mess with the status quo. And that's a very good point.
What happens to him is he is emotionally shattered by the betrayal of Sentinel, and it's not. It is partly what Prime Pax does to him, but it's more that Pax has pulled him out of his world.
That's exactly it. Yeah,
it's like almost like he's thrown him into the deep end, and then Sentinel is like pulled him under. You know what I mean? It's that kind of because he can't swim.
To me, it's like D16 was so happy. Not happy, but he was fine in his little comfort blanket. He was in his little world and whatever. Do you know what I mean? And he had his rules and his order and all of this, and he believed in something. And then that's taken away from him. But it really is Orion that kind of, I suppose, is the catalyst of all of that. You're like, if it wasn't for Orion, he would still be merrily working away on,
Orion's that annoying friend everybody has who's always the one getting into trouble. The one always like, he's like, oh, why don't we do this? And you're like, oh man, I don't want to do that. I'm going to get in trouble. You know what I mean? And he's that guy like, oh, I've just done it anyway. And you're like, oh, why have you dragged into this? He's that guy.
He really is. I thought it was
pot of gold.
They're so well-rounded, both the characters, and I like that. I like that. I think in order for this film to work, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work. I couldn't really imagine it before we obviously saw it, but it was hard to imagine how they were going to kind of make Megatron work as a legitimate friend of Optimus. And like
totally.
It's sort of surprising now, even now, when you see stills of D16 hanging out with like Alita and Bumblebee and B127 or whatever it is, it's sort of still surprising because you think, wow, that's so alien to what we typically think of as Megatron, but it works, and then it also feels like Megatron come the end of the film.
Because it's even like there's the scene where they're dragged to the race, and Megatron D16 doesn't want to go, and then it gets those great seats, and he's like, suddenly he's like, man, this was a great gift. And then Optimus pulls the rug out. He's like, wait, there's more.
Surprise.
And it's like, the outcome of that is great, but it's that constant, like, little digging, every now and again. It's like, he gives me something, and then he pulls it away. And then he gives me something, and then it screws up for some reason. And that's where he gets to, where he finally breaks with becomes Megatron, is the Sentinel thing and that. And it's all a build-up, and I think this is really expertly done.
I think the bit that worked for me is this, with this sense of him becoming Megatron, was almost like that feeling for him of, well, everything's garbage, it's all been, everything I believed is a lie, it's all been taken away from me, and so now clearly I'm going to have to do better. Do you know what I mean? Like, clearly I'm going to have to make this inward. New world, exactly. And he just loses all sense of trust or whatever in anybody and anything else.
Snaps.
He does. His world shatters. That's what's interesting. Going back to Cybertron and like just there, because there's a bit when Jason Shearer talks about that within the artwork. It's a kinetic landscape, right? Right. And it's this whole idea that it's moving, but the characters are moving as well emotionally throughout this. And Orion Pax is constantly trying to mold. Well, he's trying to. It's like he's trying to support and help and kind of fix D16 to kind of open his eyes and all this kind of stuff. But in turn doing that, he's controlling him and he's pushing him in this direction. Yeah. And then what happens when you control somebody?
It's selfish. I think he's not doing it just because he's desperate to get D16 out there. He's doing it because he wants to do it himself as well. So selfish isn't maybe the right word, but it's self-serving to a...
Yeah, he wants to be in part of the race and doing all that kind of stuff. So he just needs someone else to accompany him so that it's like, it's not just him doing it. Yeah.
And it's the thing with Megatron as well, what I find fascinating is this whole break thing. It's the way he then takes over the Decepticons is just by force. It's like, he's so pushed, and it's almost like it's out of grief and outrage. He doesn't, it's not like he suddenly moves in and then slowly starts manipulating people and stuff. He just goes, nope, not having that. I'm in charge now. I really like that, because it's not what you would traditionally see.
Yeah, that massive act of power and supremacy that he just shifts is like at that point. And I remember thinking
he is the bully then.
Yeah,
yes,
it's like
becomes the bully.
It becomes the bully, yeah, exactly. But it's like how are they gonna bridge this gap, in a 90-minute film? And they did it so effectively.
I think what really worked is that there are many scenes where D16 surprises you as the audience, but also Orion, right? And like, but it starts subtle, because it starts with a slight tone of voice or something, like something he says where he just snaps ever so slightly, but it's not like too over the top. It's not, he doesn't suddenly, like after they discovered the cave and Megatronus and all of that, he doesn't suddenly just, become evil. He starts to get a bit ratty and things like this, and
irritable.
Yeah, irritable is a good way of looking at it. Yeah, and he starts to be a bit more terse in the way he's talking, but it builds slowly over time. And there's a couple of bits with the music that really kind of obviously anchor the point and kind of accentuate it, such that you're like, yeah, okay, this is a key moment. This is a moment that their friendship is not going back from to the same place it was. Like it's gone over a little barrier here, not to the point where their friendship is broken, but in that moment, after the cave and everything, the
dynamic shift.
The dynamic has changed. Exactly.
The balance changes, and I think D16 becomes far more assertive, because it's not like he's a weak character beforehand, but is obviously keeps just getting dragged along.
He's getting dragged along.
He can't say no. When he tries to say no, he still ends up. And then by the end, you see him. It's very much like the thing, like when he takes over the Decepticons. It's very much just a force of will. No, this is my way now.
This is it.
And he's taking control of his own life.
The big turning point for me was the bit with when they meet the High Guard, and they're still all kind of on the same page roughly at that point. But it's when obviously Megatron suddenly has the argument with Starscream, and it's like the fusion cannon comes out of him. Organically almost, and it's like a symbol of his rage. Exactly. And I really like that. I like the fact that even when they first get their cogs and everything from Alpha Trion, was going to say Alpha Trion. He does have a little bit of tree on him.
He does have some foliage. Yeah.
I've got so used to hearing you say it, Jason, that I'm
camo.
like, I got so used to it that I'm kind of like, it's become a bit earwormed.
That's what happens. I'm like Orion Pax. I just persuade people to say things wrong.
You are that annoying friend. Yeah,
I am that annoying guy.
Yeah.
Jason, are you sure it's not Orion Pax?
Well, no, that's too far.
Is it though?
No, probably not.
It's basically the same word, but with a different first letter.
Yeah, exactly. But I think what works for me in that moment is that, when they first get their cogs, it's not like Megatron suddenly becomes way huger than the others or anything. Obviously, he turns into a kind of a tank, fine, but he's not suddenly overshadowing, the other guys or anything. It's really kind of as the process as his rage builds and that kind of personality side comes out, that he becomes bigger and more armored.
I think it shapes him, doesn't it? I think it very visually shapes his transformation. His transformation is fueled by what he's going through, and I think that's quite true of all of them to some respect. But mostly that's very much focused in on Megatron, and it's almost like he's juiced up in a different way because the others haven't changed as much, whereas his rage, and I think it manifests in his body.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, honestly. And I think, come the kind of final bit where it's sort of, it's an accident, but ultimately, Prime or Orion jumping in front of, to stop him, to want to stop him from making what he perceives as a big mistake in killing Sentinel. So, he's trying to save D16. He's trying to save his friend as well in that moment by jumping in front of the cannon fire. But of course, it's almost like, to me, it rang true because for D16, it was like another time where Orion is trying to force him into being something and won't let him just do what he wants to do. Do you know what I mean? It's like he's trying to control him and he just has enough.
There's a great irony to their relationship in that Pax is always trying to expand D16's horizons, but D16 clearly feels like he's trying to force him to be something he isn't. And then how he becomes Megatron, is it actually the first time it manifests as him taking his own decisions like that and asserting himself?
But then at that point, Orion is like, no. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's what I mean.
That's
so
right.
It kind of feels like it is a reaction to Pax as much as it is Sentinel who breaks him. It's like his reaction to almost like, you've pushed me so far. This is who I am. Yeah,
now you're getting it. Here it is,
Do you know, it's like, and I'll caveat this with that, I love my brother to bits, but it reminds me a bit of siblings, right?
Wow.
And the fact that, so me and my brother are really close, but we fought a lot as kids growing up and all that kind of stuff.
And he became a tyrannical despot.
Well, I was the innocent one. I was Orion Pax. Oh no! I've just realised what the film's about. It's me and my brother. He's Megatron now. But no, it's that whole thing about, we have those relationships in our lives that do that push us, and kind of we know we can kind of go, I kind of know someone a bit like Orion, or I kind of know someone a bit like D16. But me and my brother, in the way that we were growing up, and it got to the point where we just went, well, this is daft, let's not do that anymore. Love, not war. But this split that happens between Orion and D16, and as you said, Sixo, Orion's reaction when he realizes that he's pushed him too far, that added another layer for me of like, he needed that moment of realization before his ultimate fall. This was a bit that I felt was really powerful.
Yeah, I really think so, honestly. It all felt surprisingly organic for me. I mean, I remember when, thinking back, in the episode that we did, the kind of trailer reaction or whatever, after we'd seen the first trailer, we were speculating then about how much of this journey are we actually going to see in the film, because we guessed, and I think it is about that, it's going to be roughly a 90-minute film, and we were kind of like, it's a lot to kind of go through to take them from the place that clearly they're at in the first trailer to Optimus and Megatron, and I think at the time we even speculated that maybe we wouldn't see the full the full journey, like it would get to a point, but they really went for it. And I think what's surprising but also works so well is how that's done, because it never feels rushed to me. And you could have expanded it over 3 films or done whatever else, but
absolutely, yeah.
So someone actually, I think it was our mate Nick, it may have been, someone said this to me. They were like, it's funny because this film does in 90 minutes with Megatron what the Star Wars prequels doesn't quite do with Darth Vader in 3 whole films.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good observation.
It's a really good observation.
And I really think that's true. I really think that's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think so much of that is the characters, ultimately. And one thing I did want to just kind of talk about is that, obviously, when we met with Lorenzo the first time, and the second time, I think, he talked quite a bit about the fact that they had taken a lot of learnings from some of the live action films in that regard, to kind of put character first. And he talked a lot about the fact that for him, like a big thing was that not having any humans in this film was quite revelatory because they were able to kind of really focus in on the robots and whatever else. And he explained a lot of why the live action films, kind of have been the way they have been because of budget and things like this. But it was really fascinating to hear that actually those, even up to kind of Rise of the Beast, that some of those learnings had directly fed into what we saw here. And that in some ways, maybe we wouldn't have got this film, 17 years ago or whatever, that it kind of almost had to kind of go through that process and kind of build to it. So I don't know.
I think for me, there was a bunch of stuff there actually. So the creative process, the animation process, this is all hand animated, right? This is not motion captured, all that kind of stuff,
not
right?
Which
is fascinating in my mind. That's what a kind of a decision that they would make, and it shows, right? It has that lovely nuance that kind of an animator can put into that, which is beautiful. And it's those, we've talked about this too with the comics as well, the characterization, the eyes, the way that it brings the emotion across, all that kind of stuff. And you're right, like Lorenzo touched on that, the learnings from all the Bay films and what that was, and the difference and the simplicity of the Transformers 1 characters in comparison, that the designs and the elements that allow the animators to show the emotion and bring people in. That we couldn't have got that 15, 20 years ago. Let's be honest. Right?
Yeah.
We need to go on this journey.
Way. Yeah. I think so. I think this feels so satisfying because it does feel like it's taken those learnings and things and whatever else. But should we go to Lorenzo? And,
that's a good show. Yeah,
hear what
he's got to say.
We
were talking as if we've just come back from Lorenzo. So
No.
Wow. Okay.
No, keep it seamless. Yeah, exactly. No, we're going to go to Lorenzo now. But no, so let's bring him up. I mean, we've already alluded to it, but this really was an incredible experience for us, and certainly meeting the second time as well. But it's it was mad, and it was great fun and privilege, and here he is. Yeah, hi Lorenzo. Thank you so much for sitting with us. So I think, as we said to you in the bar, we're the Transformers nerds, basically. So we are fans,
basically.
Good,
absolutely.
Yeah. So we love the film,
and we wanted our fans to love this film. There's a lot of great stuff from the lore.
Yeah. Well, that was what really, I think, impressed us more than anything, was how much is crammed into just over 90 minutes, but it's like a really rich film, like visually, the story, everything.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the first one we kind of wanted to start was like, from your perspective, what went into that? What were the bits that really, for you obviously as a Transformers fan as well, I'm sure, what did you kind of think? Okay, these are the bits we need.
Well, it started really with the origin story. Just the power of it is such a human story.
Yeah.
And in a way, it has a biblical quality to it, which to me speaks big screen. But there were so many things to do. Like, what does Cybertron really look like? We've never spent much time on Cybertron.
Yeah.
Let's make the planet transform while we're on the planet. Well, how does that work? So then you have to figure that out. I think one of the things that we didn't discover it, but we didn't realize exactly how deep it was going to be, which was the idea that this movie's about friendship and the loss of friendship. And unlike most friendships, when they break apart, one person did something bad to the other. Neither of these people do anything bad to the other.
Yeah.
And so you really mourn it because nobody was the bad guy.
Yeah. We went on different paths.
Yeah. And I think that was really special. And that was one of the guiding lights, is we wanted people to feel bad for both people.
Yeah.
Not just the good guy.
Yeah.
Both guys need to feel bad.
But for this movie, this was the big step change, wasn't it? Because it was the characters came first.
Yes.
On this.
Yeah.
Well, and it brought the emotion into it. Like it did in the original cartoon with the kind of eyes, the way you did that within the kind of actual character models and stuff like that. You could really emotionally.
Very human, without being humans there. Like it's completely
what's interesting, and this probably should have been self-evident, but we didn't really think about it, to be honest, was when we make the live action films, we're investing so much of the humanity of them in the humans.
Yeah.
Well, there's no humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all the humanity we normally put into the humans is going into the robots, you know? And I think one of the interesting things will be that it's going to influence us now in the live action because you can't go back now.
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah. But that's good to hear. I mean, there was obviously quite a lot of that in Rise of the Beast as well. You know, we saw that with like characters like Mirage. What have you, had a lot of personality.
Yes.
So is that something that you're looking to carry on to like the G.I. Joe crossover movie?
Well, I would just say all live action, I think, is going to now be influenced about how you approach these characters. Now, the truth is we're also hampered because the more they talk, the more they cost.
Right. Yeah.
So, we love Paramount, but they're not going to give us an unlimited check.
Yes, totally.
So that has always been part of our handcuffs, if you would. But now we're going to have to figure out how to break the handcuffs and not break the bank.
Yeah,
we have to.
Smaller casts, maybe.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The animator in me was looking at like, so the model, the CG models you had for this, and then the characters that you were doing. Was that motion captured? The way that it was all hand animated. They were doing as well. Yeah. And that is just to get that across. But there was just really beautiful moments. Yeah. Even just the cuts and how you just give a longer beat than normal. That wasn't in your live action Transformers movie because they were so fast.
Well, and every second of CG costs. So there's no cost differential in this. Whatever it's costing. So that it really is something we've had to be conscious of since the first movie. Like in the first movie, one of the things we said was, how can we do the most minimal amount of showing robots for the first 60 minutes of the movie? Because we can't afford the ending otherwise.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it really forced the story to be around Bumblebee and Shia.
Yeah, totally.
It makes total sense.
And then for Transformers 1, obviously, it's the cast is, you know, we're talking A-list here as well. Was that always a conscious decision?
Was for me.
Was it for you?
There were some other people who didn't share my enthusiasm, but I felt like if we're going to go this route and we're going to tell this epic story of the two best friends who become mortal enemies, we better have a cast that can live up to that.
Right.
You know? And so I worked really hard. In particular, I flew all over the world to get our cast.
Right. Really? Wow.
Yeah.
And was that a challenge, you know, to bring them on board for like, you know, because this is the first Transformers anime movie since the 80s? Obviously.
Yes, it was a challenge.
Really?
Yeah. And you know, what's interesting is if an actor has children, a project like this holds so intrinsic value because they could do something the kids can watch. Yeah. And they want to do that. So, you know, you look at the actor and they have kids. Good. All right. I'm bringing some toys with me.
I love it.
No, but you know, and also, but to jump aboard something like this you're jumping off a cliff because we've never done a live action and we've done other kinds of Transformer movies, so we're not brand new in that sense either. So, you know, with Chris in particular, I went to Australia and sat with him and talked him through what our ambitions were.
Right. Nice.
You know, and what his ambitions were. And we were at a stage where we could meet his ambitions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. There's obviously a rumor now doing the rounds that he might be in the G.I. Joe.
Yeah,
also movie as well. I was going to say, I didn't expect it to spin out.
That could be interesting.
Maybe. We'll have to see.
Well, I think CAA confirmed it in something. So, you know, I'm going to listen to CAA.
Okay, cool. It's interesting.
He was excellent in the movie. All the voice actors were. But was it really exciting for you? Because you've done all these films before and they're all live action. So now you've switched to this.
Yeah, it's a different rhythm. It's a different demand. One of the things that I was very impressed with Chris was his ability to ad lib and his how funny he is. I knew he was funny, but he's funny in this movie. Like, you know, and his timing is really good. And so there's a lot of ideas in this that were not originally in the script that Chris contributed. Okay. Same with Scarlett. They both really and Brian Tyree. I mean, we were very lucky that our actors really brought a lot to I'll say, the strength of the characters that were not in the script.
Yeah.
I thought it's really fit because, and I was saying to Josh before that, we're so used to Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime. It's iconic. And sometimes when a new actor takes over, it can take a moment to do that. But from the second he started, I didn't ever think that. It just felt like that voice fits perfectly with what's on screen. This character.
And glad, because obviously Peter Cullen's a legend.
Yeah,
totally.
And we knew that some people were going to give us flack. But the truth of the matter is, he's going to continue in the live action. We're not replacing Peter Cullen. It's like so absurd when people say that to me. And more significantly for the story, this is not a fully developed Optimus Prime. Peter's voice is fully developed. You feel the maturity.
Yeah.
Totally. And this is a character who's not fully mature yet. So you needed a younger voice to carry off the attitude of the character.
Yeah. With Peter, you can definitely feel the weight of the character because it's all a battle where he felt so much younger and it was so exciting and vibrant and cool.
And also, Chris has enough of that baritone that you can imagine that he'll sound like Peter Cullen.
Yes.
Right?
Totally.
I mean,
that's it. Because even then, it's like the concern I had is like him trying to do an impression of Peter Cullen, which you don't
know.
And it is like you said.
That never works.
It would just be uncomfortable and But because Orion Pax is that character, he owned it as well. And
that's right.
But that was the thing when you've got like B-127 as well, who's just a comic relief, but just so much fun as well. Yeah. And just really well cast.
Yeah, no, Michael Keaton Keyes. I mean, talk about ad-lib.
Yeah, you can imagine.
We probably shouldn't even have written the line.
No, really.
It's just about it being, my God, he's got so many funny lines that are completely out of his mouth.
Yeah, you can just make a whole other film just with him. For 27.
For sure.
Absolutely. Amazing. That's
Talking about the live action films, how not beholden do you feel to them with this, but do you feel that there's a crossover there between these two, or do you not consider it?
It's hard to say there's none because we learned so much from them.
Right.
So I think in that respect, there's a real strong relationship because we learned about the qualities of the characters and sort of what does the world feel like. But this is in some also senses really starting over.
Yeah.
So we have the advantage, I guess, of the experience of doing those, but I don't think creatively they're not sewn together.
Yeah.
They just aren't.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And where do you see the future for this then? I know you've talked previously about maybe a trilogy for this.
Well, it's interesting. People have taken it very literally, and I guess I should watch what I say. But here's the interesting thing. When I read the script, the importance of the relationship and it falling apart, one of the things we did was we kept developing that. And then there was a moment when we got it really right where you were like, I feel really bad for both characters.
Yeah.
And Josh and I both did that, and we looked at each other and we said, "Oh, we know what's in the next movie."
Right.
All right.
And it's not like we know the plot. We don't know any plot, but we know the central scene that needs to be in the next one and the one after.
Yeah.
So that's why I said it's a natural trilogy, because we now know the scene that the whole movie will pivot around.
That's interesting.
That's really
which has never happened to me before.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of a believer in not thinking ahead.
Yeah.
So that was, we were chatting about it after we'd seen the film, which is like, and even when we did, when the trailer dropped, we were looking at it and kind of trying to work out how much are they going to reveal? Is they going to go fully into D16, going to become Megatron? How far do we go with this?
Yeah.
Is it going to be split over more movies and stuff like that? And now the setup is like, are they going to go this way? Are they going to go this way?
And I think one of the interesting ways, and obviously we don't know entirely, which I think is the beauty of our process, but this wound is not, it's not healed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that gives you a chance to live in that more than before, later on, where they're like, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe that's the third or fourth iteration, but you want to stay in this wound.
Yeah. It's a real personal story, isn't it? It's
very much so. And the more we can accomplish that, the more it will unify this story in a way. You know, look, I think one of the great things was Luke and his father, right? And that wound, certainly for the first two movies, was so locked them together.
Yeah, totally.
We were saying that in the bar after the film, actually, which was that it doesn't have to so quickly devolve into what we already know. There's still the element of
our job, I think, is to resist that as long as we can.
Yeah, because that's the interesting bit about
you can still have them kind of almost talking and like, oh, are we going to reconcile? And you can still have that.
You can do all that kind of, I mean, like I said, we really haven't explored it other than we know we want to stay in the wound.
Yeah.
But also it's like, all those miners who are no longer miners, like, well, they may begin to side with Megatron's point of view.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
What? It's not working the way out to it. It's not, democracy's messy.
Yeah.
So, that's not going to be a clean thing.
Yeah.
So my suspicion is there's going to be a lot of things staying in the philosophy of both characters, and also the wound is raw.
But that was
what is it in The Godfather? Is it the guy who comes to tell you?
Yeah.
We got to have that scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody, one of those miners, Jazz, was in there, right?
Yeah.
Jazz is going to come to him and go,
That's amazing. That's so good. Yeah.
But it looks like we're out of time. But thank you so much for, spending
you guys got one more question?
Yeah. Well, I guess my final question would be, as obviously a Transformers fan yourself, what are some of your favorite bits of the franchise beyond the films? If there's anything that you would love to see maybe done with a future Transformers project that has never been done.
Well, there's a lot of characters that I want to see.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I also loved Ironhide.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to bring Ironhide back because I loved the whole, can I shoot them?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a scene in the first movie that I think captured all of our imagination, which was when the robots are hiding from mom and dad.
Yeah.
They're back against.
Very popular scene.
And I think what that did was put you you do exactly when you were a kid, when you were hiding from the parental voice.
Yeah, totally.
And I'd like to get back to that feeling.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know quite how to get there, but that's definitely something I'm going to be putting on the board going, like, how do we get to that?
Really interesting. I think, Transformers is so often, we've said it before, like global, world-ending, galaxy-ending stakes, but actually it can work just as this smaller.
Yeah, no, I think the galaxy-ending stuff is the trap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also how of course it's going to be the end of the world. Yeah. So I think it's a challenge also in the live action movies that we're going to try to address. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, the character first.
But it doesn't have to. I mean, look, I think one of the things about the crossover that's exciting is, can it be a G.I. Joe villain?
Yeah.
And therefore it's an Earthbound problem? I don't know. It may, that's one of those things where you might say, okay, that's a great idea. And then you're like, nah, it doesn't feel like a big enough problem for a Transformer.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? But you don't know until you start playing with it.
Yeah,
amazing.
Right. Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right on, guys.
So one thing about that interview for me that was fascinating is the bit where Lorenzo, for me, very definitively says this is not in continuity with the previous films, right? Like he outright, we asked him and he outright said that.
He did.
And it's been fascinating because we've been sitting on this interview for a while, obviously. And so many...
Like 4 months now, isn't it?
Yeah.
July, August, end of September. Nearly 5 months.
I know. I would have loved to have put it out sooner, but it is what it is. It's embargoes and stuff. But, what was mad for me is that seeing so many people kind of tear themselves in knots about this online and kind of slate Lorenzo going, oh, I can't believe he's trying to make it in continuity with Bayformers and stuff like this. And it's like, he's not. Like, he very clearly
totally.
is not.
Just,
I never thought it was, though. Like,
I know.
from the second we saw it, I was
but
like,
it was people that hadn't
entity.
seen it.
Yeah,
was the thing.
No, but I mean,
Guesswork,
even from the early artwork and from the first trailer, you just looked at it and went, this doesn't look anything like that. I don't see the obsession with connecting these things. I really don't.
That's the thing, but what's mad is that clearly neither does he. Do you know what I mean? And he said as much in the second chat that we had with him as well. Is that there is some continuity and what have you between some of the films, but this and he doesn't see it in that way, and clearly Josh doesn't either. So to me it was just one of those funny things where the chat with him really put it to bed for me. Of like, okay, they all see this as a new thing, a new strand. It's I think that way of him explaining it where he says, well, obviously creatively there is some link there because of all the learnings, but narratively, no. And it's like you couldn't be more clear, really.
Great.
So,
yeah, it was good. It was good to capture that.
And there would be, because there are so many of these movies where so many people have worked on them and they shape them. It's like in the same way the 86 movie shapes stuff that comes after it. The
absolutely.
Early G1 comics shape the modern comics now. Like you look at Skybound and how much of that feels thematically very similar to the G1 comic, and it's just the way of franchises as they evolve, isn't it? More than anything,
it really is.
I never saw anything in this that thought it's going to connect to the movies at all.
No, I think just one of those conversations, isn't it? So.
But it was because he also talked about the cast as well, didn't he? And that we mentioned about the fact that, like, I think it was to do with like Chris Hemsworth doing an impression of Optimus Prime, which would just be cringe and stuff like that. But it did. There was a moment. Which I didn't bring up with Lorenzo, but there was a moment for me with this film that when I found out who the cast were, I was a bit like, as soon as you start getting A-list names in it and stuff like that, there was a certain nervousness of like, oh, okay, this is a different thing, right? But I do remember, like, Lorenzo's reaction was great because he was like, nah, I absolutely wanted them, right?
He campaigned
there was a
for
reason,
them,
which was great.
He really campaigned for them. I do know what you mean, and I think we talked about it in the previous app that we did on this, around the trailer, where we said about, quote unquote voice actors versus celebrities, and the thing is it is a real topic, and it is a topic that deserves to be talked about, because it has changed. Things have changed. That said, having seen this film, I don't think any of the performances.
Oh, absolutely!
They're remarkable.
Works so well. It's brilliant. At no point was I sitting there going, that's Scarlett Johansson.
No.
Or that's Chris, or whatever. I was
Famke Janssen.
I got her name right then. I said Johansson. I was making the effort there.
But if you take Chris Hemsworth as an example, as we were watching it, even as it started, I knew who he was obviously going into it. I knew it was Chris Hemsworth. But the second the film started, it went out of my mind and it never ever came back. And all I could think of, it's like, it's not Peter Cullen, and that's fine. But I never ever questioned that it wasn't and that it needed to sound like him. I thought it sounded like Orion Pax needed to then. And when it started to Dr. Prime, it sounded exactly as he needed to. And I just thought it was great in service of that story. It's excellent. And it's another new voice. Another,
and a really good voice as well. I mean, there were some moments where I thought he went a little bit Cullen with it, as he kind of like, but it's more that is also his voice. He's got the kind of timbre to it and everything as well. The gravitas, exactly.
Has in person as we saw. Well, I glimpsed him as we were walking through.
You did, didn't you? Yeah, we were.
You see, if I'd been there, guys, we would have been through that door.
That's true.
Oh man, Sixo did try to get us,
and we would have been. Rugby tackled out of the way.
Proud, Jason. We
were limited to 2 interviews, but I did try. But we were
limited. We were going to wait outside. Oh, it's Lorenzo, wasn't it? I think as we were walking down, I think you were looking at your notes, and I heard his voice, and I just turned to the side, and as we walked past the room, because the rooms had they had a wall, didn't they? If you looked straight through the door, you would see a wall, and it went like to the back, and so I just turned my head, and I saw him stood there, and I was like, very tall.
Jason would have been straight in there with his big hands, shaking them and whatever.
I just wanted to get a photo.
Get him to sign up to the Patreon.
Exactly. Me and Sixo, Chris, and then you in the middle, Liam.
That would be funny. That would be funny.
It would have looked like flipping Thor, Giant Man, and then me, Ant-Man.
Rocket. I was going to say Rocket Raccoon, but Ant-Man. All right, that works.
Yeah, but no, he was really good in this film, and I do think. I'm going to say this lightly and politely, but I couldn't have imagined Peter Cullen in this film. Realistically, I obviously love Peter. This is you've always got to be so bloody careful, don't you? I put a thing on Twitter or whatever the other week about loving Chris Hemsworth and some of the other voice actors that have done Optimus over the years, and people started replying, going, "And what about Peter Cullen?" And it's like,
we're not deleting him.
Obviously, do you know what I mean?
There's the thing with Cullen as well. Cullen has only ever played old man Optimus Prime. Like even G1 Optimus Prime, he's still bajillions of years old.
This is exactly it.
He's John Wayne middle-aged Optimus Prime at that point. But this is a very young character, and
he's
doesn't need to sound like Cullen.
He's the Robo-Dad. He's not young, fresh-faced Orion Pax Optimus.
And we've had enough other versions. And like if you watch, say, a Spider-Man cartoon or a movie, it's a different person and a different voice. And I don't understand why people are like, Optimus Prime. Oh, it's got to be Peter Cullen. And you're like,
yeah.
But why? Yeah. Peter Cullen, even when they brought him up for the 2007 movie, the first time I heard it, I went, it doesn't sound like Optimus Prime because it doesn't sound like G1 Optimus Prime to me. And I was, you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. It's like, we don't have to have the same guy just doing the voice.
So this was it for me as well, because there seems to be an obsession within the fandom just for Optimus Prime that it has to be Peter Cullen. But you can get like Keegan-Michael Key doing Bumblebee, right? And no one's bothered. And they're just like, cool, that works. And oh my goodness, Keegan doing B127. Oh, it was so perfect, so great. And I still, that is absolutely my moment that I was correct. that is my favorite character within the film. It's just surprised. That light relief, just so good, so well done.
You would have liked that, Jason, because when we interviewed Josh the second time, he was telling us about Keegan-Michael Key. One of his favorite moments was just listening to him ad-lib constantly.
Just ad-lib it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Was good. And that's the thing. You kind of got that. You kind of that whole. It allowed this film, in my mind, allowed these actors to act. Right?
Yes.
And it comes across. And you need
so
that
true.
From an animation point of view, because then you can bring it to life. And that's what they did as well. And it's really showing. And I need to shout out as well to Steve Buscemi as Starscream.
Yes, stole the show. Stole the show.
Just that tiny,
so good.
Just the entrance and that moment. It's great. I can't wait to watch that section of the film.
Yeah, it's really good.
Brilliant.
So someone said, they weren't sure about him as Starscream because it kind of took them out or whatever. I was like, no, man, it was brilliant. You know,
it was so good.
Really good. But we have to also, of course, mention Brian Tyree Henry because
this
is the peak performance, isn't it, of the film?
It was just incredible. I wasn't sure how it was going to work. You know, I think we talked about it in the last episode of like, because it's so different to Megatron. And Megatron has had so many voices over the years anyway, but that's by the by. But it was so different to what you thought of as Megatron. And we'd only really heard him as D16 in the trailers or whatever else, or the trailer that we'd seen. So it was hard to know how he was going to kind of evolve that into Megatron.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the film, the whole like rise up and all of that, actual chills. Like I was like, there wasn't a part of me, like you said about, you know, Hemsworth, there wasn't a part of me where I was like conscious of the voice acting as such, you know, it's just natural.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of characters, they have a particular style to them. So even Hemsworth as Optimus, there's a very sort of almost like a regal tone to it that you pick up on that of leadership, and so it kind of connects for Optimus Prime. And the Megatron and D16, they sound so different to what's come before with Megatron, and I can see why people would be like, "Oh, that's different." But I thought it was great. It's just a different take because all other Megatrons tend to sound either very grand villainous or scheming villainous. There's still always like a slightly villainous tone to them. If you know what I mean, you can always pick up like a connection between them. They might sound completely different, but there's a certain style that you can pick up like as a villain. And all characters tend to be coded like this. Yeah. And here, I felt like this. What was so good about this is it makes Megatron's turn even stronger because he sounds like he's coming from a very different place. It's like you're meeting a different character at first that turns into this thing that you can't almost. It's funny because we know Megatron so well, but if you look at the character where he starts as C16 and you know what he will then become, this mad tyrant who's happy destroying worlds and stuff, it's such a far out thing to actually think of, like that this is this guy's future. And it's kind of interesting. I think that's the way he's portrayed here. It's almost like a very different tone. Like there's no hint that he would become this character, but every now and again it builds and builds until he becomes, till the turn, and you're like, it's totally Megatron. It's great.
Yeah. You know, it's what Brian brings to that role is the sensitivity at the beginning of it.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
This fragility of D16. And his there's moments of kind of childlike confusion that is there as well. Yeah. So you really empathize with him. And that was the thing, right? You needed to empathize with D16.
The turn work.
Yeah, because then the fall is even more powerful, right? And the fall for both of them is even more powerful. And to get that with two different characters through a night, I keep coming back to that. Two different characters, 90-minute film. That is masterful, right? Across lots of different levels. It's really impressive. But also shout out to Scarlett Johansson as well, because you needed again Alita 1.
She was brilliant.
Just like the perfect counter to Orion. and that whole their relationship, that juxtaposition. And she is so badass and so cool, and how she just comes into it like guns blazing, just and great to see. Like Alita One's becoming like a kind of mainstay now, isn't she?
She really is. It's funny. We've just seen that they're doing Transformers Minecraft collaboration, and of course she's in that. Yeah, but she's in Skybound. She's been in War for Cybertron. She's everywhere at the moment, and it's cool because she's kind of become the one of the core cast of the franchise.
Yeah, it's really good she has well. Again. I feel like you've needed someone other than just RC. I think you've needed another character like that, and she works really well. And Johansson's work is great because she just sounds like what you would expect Alita One to sound like. But with Megatron, I think you needed that completely different sounding voice, because if he just rolled up to sounding like Soundwave, exactly. Crush you with my bare hands, you're like, he's obviously going to turn into a villain. And whilst we know he's going to turn into a villain, from a storytelling perspective, you need that build, I think. And I think for little kids coming into this for the first time, that turn is more
that's the interesting bit, isn't it?
It's going to blow their minds, honestly. But that's what
the film is clearly as well geared to, as much as it is. It is like to bring in a new audience, and I think it's so well done. Like I've seen people criticizing it for it, going, it's like a kiddies Transformers film. It's like in 1986, I was like 3 years old, and this was clearly made for me as a child to sell me toys.
And why is that a bad thing? I find this fascinating. Right? Why is that a bad thing? Up is a kid's film, right? Because it's a cartoon, but it's got a really sensitive story and really
Studio
poignant
Ghibli
story.
Stuff. A lot of that is made for kids. And it's tremendous.
And I think this whole idea is
anything that Pixar do. I mean, but films like Luca for me and things like that are just so beautifully done. They've got a wonderful message, but I can sit and watch it with my son, and he loves it too. Do you know what I mean? And it works. But the fact is that this actually is quite different to those as well, in that there is a lot more action. It is more of a kind of action film in that regard. Also, it just happens to also have that character work. So I find those accusations very unfounded and just bizarre, frankly. But
it's strange because at the same time, they are right. It is a kids' film, but that's you say. It's not a negative. It's great for it.
It's not a bad thing.
All the things we talk about.
I can't wait to take my son. It's going to be great.
We're like 40-plus-year-old blokes. I'm obviously younger than Sixo, but
by 3 minutes.
There's a year, as we discussed.
No, definitely not a year. Definitely not a year.
But
a couple of days.
Transformers is like in our lifetime. We talk about the kids' toys. That's what we do. That's the thing. And I don't think people have a self-awareness sometimes when they're like, this is a kids' film. You're like, well, yeah, of course it is. And that's what's great about it. Like we talk about, how many things do we talk about like that were like Batman films or other films, Star Wars. These weren't made for like the
Muppets
old
Christmas
adults
Carol
of the time.
Can I say as well, I'm so happy that this is a film that I can take my 7-year-old to see, because I know we talked about it before, but I haven't as yet and don't know when I will show him the live action Transformers films, because like I don't want to show him a film with dogs shagging and whatever else, but also it's not even that, to be fair. It's not even that. I was talking to someone about this the other day. It was the lady that we met at the second interviews, Liam, who was obviously a mum, and we were chatting about this. And her son was a little bit younger than mine. We were talking about Transformers and whatever else, and we both said the thing is, they're quite violent films, the live action films. So that's one, but it's not even that. It's the humor, and it's the kind of like the teenage humor almost to them. Do you know what I mean?
Puerile.
Yeah, exactly.
The tone skews very much older kid, teenager, young adult, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not aged well. At all.
Like the first film, even, which is probably the most likely one that I would consider showing to my boy. But even then, it's got jokes about masturbation in it. So how are you gonna? Do you know what I mean? How are you gonna?
But that's if we go back and we all pick the 3 best movies of the Transformers films, we'd say 86, Bumblebee, and this movie. And the thing they all have in common is they are all more children friendly movies. They're not as gratuitously violent, and they're not skewed in that same way at that kind of teen, young adult crowd. They're all very conscious of that. And I think that's just how this brand works the best, is when it realizes what it's supposed to be doing, which is fun, but it's supposed to appeal to kids. It's about toys, and it's about adventure, excitement, enjoyment.
Nailed it.
Less about robots peeing on things, or that kind of
yeah, totally.
Kind of
some people like
parents
it,
getting
sure.
high, and that's what I mean. There's no problem. Like I like the first film. I like a lot of the films. I enjoy them for what they are, but I think where this brand really works is like this. Like even if we look at the old Marvel comics, like you read them and they're mature, but there's a difference I think between mature and then that kind of edgy trying to be adult stuff. There's
for sure.
a different way. Like there's
Edgelord,
Marvel comics. They're still written like when we spoke to Bob Budiansky, he said they were written towards kids. That was the audience aiming
as
for.
They should be, yeah.
But you read them now, and we still read them and hold them up as like, the sacred tenets of the franchise. And it's because they were made for kids. That's what made them great.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think Transformers 1 absolutely understands its audience. But
mature
it's not...
It is mature storytelling, and I think
it's mature. It's mature in the...
It's
it's definitely not talking down to them. I mean, I can't remember if I've said this on the pod or not. I don't think so. But in the second viewing I went to, the thing that really struck me, and I did say this to Josh and Lorenzo as well, that the thing that really hit me was watching it with a bigger audience and not just press, because there were kids in the audience and fans and whatever else.
I can't wait till that. That's
it was amazing.
Yeah.
So the bit right at the end, which really got me, first of all, there was laughter throughout, like from everybody. Like people were really laughing. It was a full packed cinema and people were howling. And the bit that really got me is right at the end where the turn happens and D16 shoots Orion, and Orion jumps in front of the blast or whatever, and you just see him explode. Josh talked about this and said that he very consciously put a moment of silence in the film at this point. Yeah. And what you heard, of course, in the audience was heard this absolute intake of breath throughout. And there were little kids there watching this, and you just know that that's their 86 moment.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's their 86 movie moment. It's the same sort of shock and awe and impact that we felt when we saw Optimus die in the first film. All right, that was more permanent, sort of, in terms of that story, but it doesn't really matter because
it was a longer sabbatical.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of that as a one-off, standalone film, but it doesn't matter because the impact is the same, I think, and you're going to get kids watching this.
It's the emotional impact.
Exactly.
You've brought people in. It's worth us actually. Why don't we go to Josh actually for the second interview on this, because he talks about this, doesn't he?
He does indeed.
Yeah,
I think we should. Yeah, let's get Josh himself, because otherwise we're gonna
give it away.
Exactly. We're gonna gazump him. So yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Josh. You can hear it from himself. He talks about this moment in a bit of detail, and there you go. Hi, Josh.
Hi.
Nice to see you again.
Good to see you guys.
Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, because,
of course,
we really enjoyed meeting you last time. And I guess this time I was just interested in, obviously now the film is here and people are actually seeing it and reviewing it and things like this. Like, how does that feel for you now?
It's still weird.
Yeah.
After it's interesting working on a film for, 3.5 to 4 years. And then even just to see the first billboard out on the street, you're like, oh, this shouldn't be out there yet. You just get that initial feeling of like, oh, now it's real. And it's like, okay, walk, little baby, go out.
Is it quite nerve-wracking, like seeing the reactions and things coming in?
No, not on this film at all, because I'm very proud of it, and I love it. And I love watching the audience watch it. So I'm really happy with this film.
You should be.
When we saw you last time, obviously all of our reactions were really positive, but that was all the way back in June. Now it's out most places, and you're getting the real public feedback and stuff. It must be really affirming and kind of a relief. It's like, oh, everybody loves it. It's great.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. So, but it is great to hear that fans and everybody have come up to me, and even parents that have just brought their kids. They said, I didn't think this movie would be for me, but I loved it. It's really, really rewarding.
I think for me, so I've seen it once more since we last met, and particularly that show, because I went into it knowing, having seen it already, I was kind of like, okay, this will be interesting to judge. And one thing I found is that all of the people I was sat with, a lot of whom are, of a certain age, let's say, and have grown up with this property since the 80s, pretty unanimously, people are saying this is the best Transformers film they've seen, like even ahead of the 86 one. Yeah. So is that mad to hear, or is that, I don't know?
I want people to say that because I think that every film I work on, I want it to be the best it could possibly be. So it's nice to hear that, especially from fans. And, I'm so happy, you know, I had such a great cast, obviously, but I'm happy for the crew as well that they've worked so hard on this and they brought so much love into it as well. So they seem very proud of it, which makes me happy.
It looks like there was quite a lot of camaraderie and things like that.
You
know, just based on sort of social media snippets, that kind of stuff. You know?
Yeah. We worked with ILM in Sydney and Paramount, and everybody who works on it that has a Twitter account. They're very happy.
Definitely a lot of love for it from behind the scenes, which is really enthusiastic to see. I mean, talking again about the '86 film, one thing I also got from my second viewing. And I was interested in this. Last time we spoke about your memory of, you know, Optimus Prime dying, that kind of stuff in the original film.
Right.
But one thing I really got from the second viewing, because there were quite a few kids in the screening, was, you know, particular scene quite late in this film where I presume I'm okay to say, you know, that obviously Optimus, spoilers, but gets injured. And there was definitely a very palpable intake of breath in the audience, and you could hear little kids going like that. And I kind of wondered if that was something that you were kind of aware of, that it might have that impact.
Absolutely. I wanted that moment to literally suck the air out. That's why the sound drops out completely.
Yeah.
And what I love about that moment, I love watching the audience watch it because it tells me we did something right, because you can hear a pin drop usually, you know, in the theater. And, as a filmmaker and as a storyteller, that's what you want people to be completely engaged in the story. And so from that moment until the end of the movie, I think is when people are just the most like on the edge of their seat. Like what's
I think so. Very much. For me, it was one of the most memorable moments in a film in recent memory where, as you said, the whole room just went completely silent, and it was like you could hear the reaction. You know, it was really funny.
And I think, you know, there's a great quote about the end of a movie needs to be surprising but inevitable.
Right.
And that was the goal there. It's like, of course, things are going to come head to head because that's what we expect, but not in the way you quite expect it to happen.
So when you see it at test screenings and this reaction happens, do you go, ha ha, got him again every time?
Like a villain?
Yeah.
I'm like, woo, ha ha. Yes. No, I want people to react to it. I want people to feel for it and be, you know, it's basically whisking the audience away for 90 minutes to Cybertron and not worrying about their lives or anything else, just being like interested in what's going on screen, relating to it and feeling it.
Well, the story in this film is so unique for Transformers, and it's interesting. Like, what drew you to make this movie?
When I first read the script, actually, when I first read the title, which was Untitled Transformers Movie, but maybe I was like, well, this would be number 8. Like, what is this? And when I saw it was an origin story, it's like, that's cool. It's before anything anything on the timeline. It's no humans in it, which was because it's millions of years before Earth, I think, even exists. So humans aren't there. But it's the relationship between those two characters that we know as enemies. Even my parents who know, I don't know how they know this, but they know that Optimus and Megatron are villains. That relationship there, being that they were friends at the beginning, immediately I thought of like, oh, it's Cain and Abel, it's Ben-Hur, it's Ten Commandments, it's Professor X and Magneto. You know, it's those that type of relationship movie where it's this big epic thing, but it's just about this core relationship that makes or break everything.
It is like a dramatic breakup movie, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it made me think, we know they're going to break up, so the hard part is selling them together at the beginning, because we've never seen that before. And so I knew that if we can sell that, if we can make that a real relationship that people care about and enjoy watching, then you're going to really feel it at the end.
Well, one thing I noticed when I watched it for the first time was you use a lot of smaller shots. It's not like there's a lot of grand vistas and things like that, but it's very purposely focused on the characters. Mm-hmm. And I was listening to a podcast you did this week with the ILM, and you were talking about how you did some sort of motion capture where you could go into the film and sort of position it so you could see where things were going to go.
So this was something new that we tried, which was we didn't do motion capture to animate the movie. Everything's animated by hand by the CG animators at ILM. But before, almost like part of storyboarding, we did motion capture to get our characters, rough models of our characters, into a rough version of the world. Because the artists that we had on this movie are not only are they amazing by hand artists, but in the art department, but they can actually model as well.
Wow.
And so we were able to get them models. And then we asked ILM, can we do motion capture to kind of just get everything into the computer and actually act out some of our scenes that aren't all action, of course, and no transforming because we didn't. The mocap, it really hurts the mocap actors. Can you please fold backwards?
Yeah, exactly.
They don't enjoy that. So but more of the talky scene, like the scene where we're meeting B for the first time, something like that. And so we basically said, we don't need every wrinkle and movement like in Avatar or anything, but we just want it to be simplified. And they were like, oh, you want a talking scene vocab? Okay. And they were able to do it. And so what was great about that is it helped me as a director seeing the scale of our characters in that world. First thing I realized when you see two mocap actors together is like our characters are basically football players. They have huge shoulder pads and helmets on. And it made me reframe everything because I needed to have room for them, or get closer on the close-up. So it was really great. It was like we were doing it in live action. I'm directing the actors, and we had to line them up. Sometimes one person would be Alvatron, who's twice as big as the smaller version. And so it took it was really fun. And we use that, the scale. So scale would be off, but we would work around that. And then those sequences that we would shoot, we would then cut together. It kind of became like a mix between storyboards and previs.
Right.
And it was really helpful. Really cool.
That is super interesting. One thing I wanted to ask about was I don't really like the word, but the lore of this film, as it were, which is kind of a heavy word. But where did some of the inspiration come from for things like the inclusion of Sentinel Prime and like the 13 Primes specifically? Because that is quite heavy duty, old school Transformers lore.
Yeah.
Like, did you feel obligated to kind of pick and choose stuff from across the spectrum, or was it just kind of see what works? Or?
It was, we had Hasbro right there with us.
Right.
And so anything I had a question about, they would, we'll get back to you on that. And then I'd talk to the brand team and then give us anything we needed, from stories to designs, like anything. And, so it was like, here's the lore of it. And I was like, oh my God, this is too much lore. And we're only telling this much of it.
This is the thing, yeah.
But what can we use to help tell that story?
Yeah.
And so I really liked giving more of a history to Cybertron that's not just like, we live here on this planet. Hi. It's like, no, there's legend in their life. There's a whole there's a story in both directions that we've never explored before.
As a fan growing up of Transformers, is it great for you then to be able to have added your own stamp to the lore? You've given this whole new nobody's ever seen before.
Well, yeah. I mean, I grew up watching the original cartoon, and so did my cast and crew. Everybody brought a lot of the nerdy fandom love to it, and it's an interesting question. I never thought of it that way. It was more of just what feels right for the story, and just kind of honoring what's been done before, but also pushing it in a direction that's new.
That's interesting. I mean, you must have some idea of where the storyline might go from here, right? Like, I don't know if I'm able to ask are you interested in coming back to tell more of that, or is that too early to say?
Well, the first thing was, we got to get this right. This movie needs to stand on its own. But as we got towards the end, I couldn't help but think, well, this could happen or that could happen. So there's definitely more to tell, the war itself on Cybertron, and then eventually they go to Earth. So there could be, there's so much story just in all that,
Yeah.
So, but I really enjoyed working on this movie, so we'll see what happens.
So yeah, that second chat with Josh, for me, again, really interesting and so different to the first time, because obviously he'd seen a lot of the reactions, things like this. It was just fantastic to talk to him, really, and kind of get his take on how people were kind of finding the film and all of that. But it was just interesting to me as well to hear that, and it should be no surprise because he knows what he's doing, but that those moments, like the Orion being shot, that they were not manufactured, but they were created in a way to elicit a particular kind of reaction, and that he, exactly,
and well received as well.
Yeah,
it was so great that when he's talking, because we said it, didn't he? It was just like that's to he's watching the audience and waiting for their reaction on that, which I love that, and totally feel when he was saying that, I was like, oh yeah, that's amazing. It's like, this is nothing better than seeing something you've created get that
absolutely
kind of
and I'm going to tell you, at that moment where Optimus gets shot and falls, I was, we're talking about kids being bought in. I was totally bought in as well. Like I was absolutely invested in that.
At this point. This is like, honestly, I'm like, and I'm like, really? Is this what we're doing?
I thought it was raining and somehow the roof was leaking, and I was Jason.
Like,
mate.
Everyone at that point, everyone had ran out of water, and I refilled everyone's glasses.
I was in the middle, honestly. I was like in the splash zone.
It's crazy because if you talk to people about Transformers, like any of us, and you would have said like, oh, Prime gets shot, he dies, you'd go, oh, of course he does, because that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Watching it, one of the best things one of the big compliments I give this film is there were so many things that happened that I didn't know were going to happen. Like most of the film, I had no idea where it was going. Like I knew where it had to go to get to Megatron, to get to Prime, to get these characters where they need to be. But somehow, all the way through the journey, everything that happened, I was like, oh. And it's a weird experience in that way, because
it's so true.
We know so much about these films, characters, and we've stories, we've seen it all. And so many of those things occur, but I was still surprised when things did happen. It was really good.
So this was for me at the end, right? Is that I was kind of like, oh, is it gonna? I don't know about you guys, but I was like, is it gonna finish here? Is that it? Is this it? Is it he's gonna fall into the center of the planet and then it's like to be continued, or he's dead, or whatever. But no, we get the whole Matrix moment as well,
and Rise
Optimus
rebirth. Prime,
Rise Optimus Prime. But that as I mentioned, I'm an emotional mess at this point. Right? I'm like, what's going on? Oh my goodness, he's falling down. I'm like, I can't have my 86 moment again. There has to be something that happens.
I love the idea of you being like, not again,
not again. No. Hasbro.
Do you remember when Jason got upset about Optimus dying in Transformers Animated for like 15 seconds?
I do.
And he thought in the opening mini-series of the series, and Jason wasn't sure if he was going to come back.
Episode 3, they've killed him. What are they doing?
Oh my god! But will he return?
Well, that's what I was like in Transformers 1. So come in the Matrix. That's what we needed. So we got that. But there was I don't know, visuals. There was a kind of wee bit for me of Hot Rod getting the Matrix and the kind of stylization of it. Yeah.
Did you think Hot Rod was going to come in here, maybe voiced by Jack Black or something like, "Hey guys, the next films are all about me."
Imagine.
And then Prime entrance, back into it as well. It was peak, but it was an absolute roller coaster as a film finishes. And this, I am very aware that my family are within earshot, and I really have tried my best so they're not getting any spoilers. But we will be seeing it in a couple of weeks, a bit longer for us. And I'm so excited about the kind of last quarter of the film.
And, for sure.
And that moment, taking my son and my partner to see it as well.
It was. It ramps up. I do think that they've started showing too much of it in trailers and things like this.
I've told them not to watch it.
I think they had to, though, a little bit, because the first trailer, when we talked about it, I felt like when I first saw it, the first thing the vibes I got from it was, I was like, it reminds me a lot of like a Kung Fu Panda kind of film. It's going to be lots of jokes. But then when we watched it, I came away with a totally different experience. I was like, that trailer, it's like those scenes are in the film, but
it's more like Madagascar.
That trailer isn't really reflective of what you watch. Because when I came out of it, I was like, it's not like a Kung Fu Panda film. It is like a Pixar film. It's got that Inside Out, Toy Story,
it totally
that heart, that feeling. It's not
very much so.
It's got Josh Cooley.
Yeah, like Kung Fu Panda is like a lot of like just jokes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, constant jokes, constant
isn't
quips.
That the humor here is like heartfelt, meaningful, and funny.
I've seen a few people now that have seen the film kind of criticizing that original trailer and saying that it's not helping or whatever. I mean, I don't know, because there have been 2 or 3 trailers since then in reality, and
the people I've shown the first trailer to, I've loved it. Like people
exactly.
Like my girlfriend. People are Transformers fans.
I don't think that first trailer is turning anybody off. Let's put it that way. I don't not non-Transformers fans anyway. I don't think like maybe diehard G1ers or whatever, but I don't think your average person on the street is seeing that first trailer and going, I'm not watching that.
That's a great point, because I've been to the cinema quite a few times since that trailer's been out, and it's been on and I've been with other people, and none of them are Transformers fans, and each time people have come out and gone, man, that Transformers film looked really fun and interesting. So
I do think that there's something, and I know I said this to you, Liam, but like I've got a very good mate who I would say is a Transformers fan, like nothing like us. Do you know what I mean? Doesn't collect toys or anything like that, but like loves the '86 movie and all of that, and like does like the Bay films as well, and he can quote the '86 movie off by heart. So he's a fan. He's a fan. Yeah, I would say so. Doesn't keep up with it or anything like that. But we were texting a couple of months ago, whenever it was, a couple of months back, and I mentioned about a new film coming out, and he's like, "All right, is there a new one? Is there?" I was like, yeah. This,
And he had no idea.
No, absolutely zero clue.
Wow.
And we're texting about it. I was like, it's animated. It's like a bit like a prequel. Here's the trailer. And his exact quote back has stuck with me, because just the text came through after I sent the trailer, and the text was, "Spin my nipple nuts and call me Susan." And clearly very excited by it, but I think it's not that people are seeing the trailers and being turned off. I think it's just that people are not necessarily aware that it's out there,
I do think the first trailer, I think it gives a different impression of what the film is. I think it gives the impression that it's just non-stop humor. Yeah. But it isn't like that.
For gags and all this kind of stuff.
It's a great trailer. Yeah, it's still a great trailer. I still watch it every now and again now. Like, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I still love it as well. And the thing is, I'm one of those weird people now that I don't watch trailers because I can work out films by watching a trailer. So I generally avoid them. But with this one, I was like, well, if I don't watch this, I'm going to know enough about it. And actually, we were chatting about it as well. But it didn't. The first trailer for me didn't spoil it. I was really excited. I thought it was a lot of fun about
space. You would have. I know. Do you remember all of that?
An hour. Goodness, I'd forgotten.
I am so glad though we got that experience to see it so far in advance that we had genuinely no idea that it wasn't just going to be exactly like that. And I think that's kind of like, it was very powerful. But I am glad that in the second trailer they put those shockwave bits, just for me to be able to see it again since.
Yeah.
Oh right, yeah. So you can remind me.
There is a bit of that for us. Yeah. But I said at the time, I know to you guys, and I would say it again, that actually I was very happy to see it the first time with just that first trailer. For me that was perfect, because I went in with genuinely no expectation whatsoever of what I was about to see beyond that initial 2 minutes of footage.
I've missed that with movies, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
They just get spoiled from their own trailers.
Even if you avoid spoilers and stuff, you you tend to take in things by osmosis. There's always a long conversation, but we saw this so far ahead, and it was like you had no idea what it was going to be like, and it was so far removed from the trailer, and it was, man.
Just the fact that we had no clue how far they were going to go with the journey to Megatron, and like, would we? Because I remember at one point we were talking about, there was the clip of Megatron and Optimus in the trailer, the first trailer, but like a brief clip, and we were even saying like maybe that's just like a flash forward type thing, and we're not actually going to see that. So it's mad. But in some of the other trailers, they've really kind of shown the final battle and whatever else, and I get why they do that, obviously, but Lorenzo, when we talked to him the second time, he did touch on this.
I was going to mention that, and the learnings that he mentioned as well, which is interesting.
Well, I think they were surprised by the initial trailer. I think they were surprised that there was some kind of a reaction that they didn't expect to it. That people were like, "What is this?" This, as you said, Liam, it looks like Kung Fu Panda, and I think that caught them off guard a little bit. And maybe
I like Kung Fu Panda, by the way.
Sure.
So
do the next episode on that if you want.
I really liked the first trailer, but it's just I think it gave an impression that it was a lot more constant jokes than it is. I think that's
and people were talking about the kind of MCU quippiness of it and all of that kind of stuff. But should we cut to Lorenzo and bring him in?
I think it's worth him talking about that. And more.
This was a really good chat, particularly the second chat with Lorenzo. I really enjoyed.
It was amazing. If you watch the video, you see me at the start just giggling.
Oh God, you look so bloody sweet in that photo, Liam. Honestly, you're just like a little kid, all excited.
He was hilarious though, because it was the fact that we walked in the room and straight away he was like, "Hi, it's you guys." Do you know what I mean? And it was kind of like he was just so friendly with us, honestly. And
30 minutes we got, and he again, like the first time we met him, you get the impression he didn't want to stop talking to us. He just he was really engaging, and I think for you read a lot about people, don't you, online and stuff. And for me, I found him extremely engaging about Transformers, and I got the impression he knows a lot more than people give him credit for on that front, which makes sense because he's made 900 of these films now.
No, I completely agree with you on
interesting chat.
Honestly, I wish we could have chatted more, but as you said, we got half an hour with him, which was quite incredible. And I suppose what was more mad was that we were there, and there were like people from professional news outlets that we were chatting to, and they would be like, "Oh, I've got 5 minutes with Lorenzo. How long have you got?" And we're there like this little, we're a Transformers podcast. Do you know what I mean? We've got half an hour, and we're like, I don't know what was going on really.
That was you. He's like, "We're the Transformers nerds," and I'm like, "And other toy lines." Still there doing the bit, becoming a caricature.
We're the Triple Takeover Toycast, a fortnightly podcast all about Transformers and occasionally other toy lines as well. No, I wasn't doing all of that.
Who are you, BBC?
Exactly. But we should bring in Lorenzo and hear from him and just get his take on it. So here he is.
Well, I hope I'm a man enough to handle you guys.
Well, this is it. So I don't know if you remember us from last time.
I remember.
Okay, because we're the Transformers nerds.
I know. Trust me, I remember. It's unforgettable.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Well, we were really excited to come back, and then they offered us the opportunity to come and talk to you again.
Great.
So we kind of wanted to build on what we spoke about last time, really, if that's okay. So,
great.
I
probably don't remember what I talked
about.
No,
I was going to say,
but I'll be happy to go right with you.
Yeah, that's cool. We're in the know. And we felt a bit privileged because, of course, a lot of the folks that are here today are like sort of professional media people, if you will, which I'm not saying we're not, but we're
definitely not.
we're more like your hardcore.
Which is good, especially for this movie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was the thing. And I guess to start with, I wanted to ask you about, now that the film is out, essentially, what your reaction is to some of the positive reception that it's had, and how you're feeling about all of that.
It's better than the alternative for sure.
Yeah.
But what's really gratifying about the feedback is that the fans have so many times said, "This is the film we've been waiting for."
Yeah.
That's unbelievably good to because especially having lived with this franchise as long as I have, I know how much it means to people.
Yeah.
And so when you hear that, you really did something right.
Yes. Well, I guess that was interesting because, of course, the franchise has always been popular. It's always done well at the box office, that kind of stuff. But this one really seems to have resonated with...
Except for the first animated movie, which did not do well.
Well, yeah. I wasn't counting that one. I suppose,
Good, because I'm not part of that one.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about like the Lorenzo films, if you will. But it's interesting because everyone we've spoken to, people that have been fans of this franchise since the beginning, a lot of them are calling this the best Transformers film of all. So I don't know.
It's nice to hear. I mean, look, it's hard to choose between your kids.
Yeah.
It is definitely satisfying. It's definitely different. I think the thing that I'm most satisfied is that we have transformed your understanding of Optimus and Megatron.
Sure.
And I think that's pretty amazing when you think about it. It's 40 years people have had relationships with those two characters, and I don't think you can look at them the same after this movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's quite a fresh spin on something that actually has been, characters that have been around for 40 years.
Yeah, it gives them more dimension.
Yeah, it's a completely new dynamic because we're so used to Megatron and Optimus and that. But this, and when you first see it, it just feels natural as well. It doesn't feel like you're looking at something and sometimes you'll be like, oh, this is wrong. Just watching it. This is perfect. This is a brand new take on these characters.
Yeah, and look, obviously, it's never been done in the lore exactly how we did it, but we took pieces from different, as you guys know, the lores. There's so many different things to reach from.
This is it. I was actually interested in that, in how that came about, like what was the decision around which bits of lore to pick? I mean, the one thing, for example, is like the whole thing around the 13 primes that is in there.
Yeah.
Like, was that, I suppose, what was that process in terms of cherry picking all of those influences?
Well, it really started with the idea of Optimus as the librarian, that particular, that part of the lore, that he was a guy who believed in change from within, and Megatron didn't believe that was possible. That was sort of the driving influence in terms of how to set up the rest of the story in a way. It had to fit that, and what we didn't have time to do in a movie like this is, see him get frustrated with the powers that be and all that, so painting them as outsiders that have a perspective was really helpful.
Because there have been attempts before in some of the comics and things to have, Megatron and the Decepticons more as kind of the working class, if you like. And then, Optimus and the good guys actually sort of weirdly...
elite.
The sort of authority, as it were. Yeah. Whereas this sort of does a fresh spin on that. They're both the working class. They're both, downtrodden.
One, we wanted to have them in the same place so that as they transitioned, it wouldn't be a fight over you're elite and you're not, or whatever those things were. But I think even more specifically, I'm bored with it's kind of a sci-fi convention that the elite are there and the poor downtrodden are down there, and so even though you can see in the movie that the people who can transform are the elite, but they're not the rich exactly, right?
Sure.
They're so it's a different dynamic, but I think having them, you had to have them be in sort of the same place to be driven by Optimus's or Orion's dreams.
Yeah, because that's sort of what it feels like. It feels like Megatron isn't evil, but he feels like he's almost pushed there from Orion's constant nudging. It feels more like a breakup movie than, two people fighting. Yeah. That's such the core of this movie, which is a really interesting take for Transformers. Even in the 1986 movie, there's a lot of just fighting. Whereas this, it's really those two characters' personalities and their relationship, and that everything builds from there. Like, for you, that must be just amazing to see that finally come out in a movie like this, and then get the reaction it has.
Creatively, it was really exciting to explore because you had more opportunity to do more emotion, more humor. A lot of things came out of that, know. And I think more than anything, one of the interesting things that have changed as we were working on the story was Megatron's turn, or I say D16's turn. Was very tricky because at first it was too early. Then it was like, why? And then, okay, so, and funny enough, so then we were like, okay, we got to really make the audience related. Then the audience started relating to Megatron more than Optimus. We're like, no, that's not what we're going to do here. And we came up with the idea of the idolization of Sentinel. And that's really what helped all of us, but especially the audience, understand the level of betrayal that kind of betrayal does things to you.
Yeah. Almost that third force, as it were, kind of that external factor.
Optimus, Ryan gets him out into the world, and he wouldn't have had that journey without him. But Sentinel is the one that turns him sour, I'll say.
It breaks his heart, doesn't it? Kind of, it's that don't meet your heroes thing. When he finally meets him and it crushes everything, which is so different to before, because normally Megatron portrayed as a bully.
Yeah.
And in this case, he's not. He's
not at all.
Generally quite an upstanding guy. He's quite happy with his life. No, not happy, but content to a point. And then he's pushed and pushed, and then he sees his dream sort of crash down, and he snaps. And
society pushed him. In a way, it betrayed his belief, and that goes into his belief eventually in authoritarianism is that, forget it. I'm not following the rules, That's better to have one person who's right. Determine things, it's a very modern character in that way, I think. Because a lot of people feel betrayed by the systems that they're in.
It's definitely a film that, is striking at the right time in that regard, kind of in the wider culture and things like that. I mean, I'm interested, because when we first saw the initial trailers, that kind of stuff, it wasn't really, I think, clear how much this film would get to the breakup, if you like. And one thing I was curious about to start with, and obviously we now know, were you going to go the whole hog, or were you going to show a little bit of it?
Yeah.
Was that ever a conversation to maybe stretch the story out over more parts, or was it always the plan to kind of have it done?
This was the plan, this story. There's more story to be told, for sure. And we have some ideas about that. But no, it's one of the, I'll say, curses of having such a strong and passionate fan base is there was a lot of negativity towards the first trailer.
Yeah.
And there was. And it was interesting to us because our decision in putting that out was very specific, was to set a tone that you're not expecting.
Yes.
But it was interesting because, and like anything, when you put it out in the world, you don't know what the response is going to be. But a lot of people took it as we weren't going to go to an action place, and it's like, whoa, wait a second. No. And also, pragmatically, funny enough, animation is a lot like live action, which is the action scenes take the longest to do. So we didn't have a lot of action scenes done at that point.
Yeah. I mean, that is interesting to hear you say that, because certainly we saw a lot of that as well. I mean, I will say I really liked the first trailer, and I was quite positive about what it was showing. But I did speak to a lot of people that were like, oh, it looks like a kids animated film with a lot of humor, and that it feels like it's going to have that kind of element over the action, as you say. I mean, if you were to go back and do it again, would you change how that was promoted, or do you think it landed well because of that in a way?
It's a good question. I tend not to look back on something like that. I mean, I will say differently. If we get to make another one of these, we'll analyze that choice in the next one, right?
Yeah.
But look, I like what happened because what we were really trying to signal is these are different Transformers than you wanted, than you're used to. And I think that's a pretty good message to send to an audience on the 8th movie.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it certainly created conversation. So I think in that regard, probably.
Well, maybe there's no such thing as bad press.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. But
it definitely created a lot of
it also made me laugh.
Yeah.
And when we first saw that scene, we were like, oh my God, they are so approachable as characters.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we took that step forward.
Was it quite freeing for you? Because this is the first one that's animated. Was it quite freeing to be able to do that with these characters rather than have sort of having to have humans because it's real and having to have real cars and things? This you could focus in, because it's very interesting. Like watching this film, it feels very personal, even though you've got these massive landscapes, but the camera always focuses in on the character moments. It seems really purposeful on that front. So,
no, it was great to have really less elements, right? And for the focal point to be the relationship, usually the focal point is, can we survive? What's going to happen? And there's a lot of elements to that, right? Who are the bad guys? Who are the good guys who are going to save the day? You have cars, you have all those sort of, but more than anything, the reason we were attracted to this story was the driver of this story is the relationship between these two guys and the loss of it.
That makes a lot of sense, because a lot of films, like the Transformers films, like every film is like, this is the worst day that's ever happened and the biggest fight they've ever had to face, and it just keeps escalating. But this film is very much like it's just a battle between them on a personal level and the friendship breaking up.
Well, I remember when I first ran into the story, it's very biblical. It's not exactly Cain and Abel, but it has elements of that where you're just going, this is really emotionally significant, and this tearing at you. We didn't want to lose that along the way, but we also wanted the levity and the fun of going on this journey. And it felt to us, in making an animated movie, we owed both the family audience and our core audience an experience that spoke to both of them.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, one question I had was whether it was, I presume, a conscious decision to kind of go for that slightly more younger audience as well, in a way that this film can, appeal to both, because a lot of the live action films maybe skew a little bit more kind of 12 plus or whatever it is, but this one feels like maybe it'll bring in, slightly younger.
It's an interesting thing because, the story of how Orion Pax and D16 evolve drives it younger because they're younger characters.
That's true.
You know, and so it was never like, oh, okay, how are we going to get the young audience? How are we going to get As it evolves, you start asking some more sophisticated questions. But the first question we were asking is like, what's the journey of these characters? And they, you know, in particular, both of them they're sort of starry-eyed characters, right?
Yeah.
D16 is starry-eyed about Sentinel, and Ryan Pax is starry-eyed about just about everything, right? You know,
sure.
and so that does bring it younger, or a younger character. And actually, in some of the earlier scripts, it felt too young. And so trying to find the sweet spot of that journey emotionally of like, they're not teenagers, they're young 20s. They're trying to become young men to men.
Yeah.
You know, and so, I mean, somebody said to me the other day, this is Stand By Me on Cybertron.
That's a great
and I thought so too. And we'd never thought about that, but it was like, okay, I'll take that.
That's one of the great things about Stand By Me in this movie is it doesn't talk down to the audience.
No.
Like a lot of kids' films play very much to a smaller, younger audience. This doesn't. It's like a kind of film you can enjoy. Like a lot like Stand By Me is one you can enjoy as an adult and as a child. And with this, seeing Optimus have this kind of more youthful sort of attitude, it's really refreshing to see. It's like, for yourself, it must be really like exciting to be able to, having dealt with these characters for so many years, be able to add something different, because he's always portrayed in every media as old and weary and tired.
Battle scarred.
Yeah, and even you see,
and also he's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
In this movie, he's not right.
He's not right, yeah.
He's almost like...
Maybe at the very end.
He's not a villain, but he's almost the antagonizing force that's pushing Megatron into his...
Well, it's interesting you see it that way. I'm not sure I see it the same way, but in the sense that I see the betrayal of Sentinel's betrayal is the thing that really pushes him over the edge. I'll say it that way, right? Orion pushes him, I guess, in a way to open his mind. And then once his mind's open, Sentinel gives him a good whack on the side of his head, you know. It's what's so interesting is, and I think this is really a cool thing, is you guys grew up with one version of Optimus and Megatron. You can't think of them the same way after seeing these.
No, it's true. I mean, I think that's one of the strengths of Transformers, and it's what I always say about the brand, is that actually, I mean, even going back to the 80s, you know, there was a cartoon and a comic, for example, the two storylines. And the fact that it has been reinvented multiple times over sort of lends itself to having those, you know, fresh perspectives, that kind of stuff. But even then, it's surprising that we've got to this point and this is still a new thing. You know,
it is. And it's interesting to me because I think the other side of it is, if this is your first movie of Transformers, you're going to see those two characters differently than you guys see them, right? Like, they're going to see them just differently. And what does that mean going forward?
Exactly. It's a bit like the kids that grew up before, you know, the prequels, the Star Wars prequels versus afterwards. You know, you get that different perspective on
I mean,
Vader,
I can only appreciate, for me, I'm the early one. Right?
No, I was the same. Yeah, exactly. So it is different. And where do you see this all going now? Because, of course, you know, I think last time we briefly touched on the idea of a sequel. I'm sure things have maybe evolved a little bit since then.
Well, I'm a little bit... I try not to get ahead of ourselves, and I think one of the reasons why we've been able to keep our series fresh is because we wait until we actually get to experience these movies with the audience before we settle on what we're going to do next. And there are definite lessons about what people responded to here. You know, for instance, the reception to Starscream here. There's no way we don't make him a big character. Character. You know what I mean? It's just really funny how you can feel it right away. You know, and I think what's great is, and this goes to as an adult, you know, and a relationship doesn't end. You know, the bitterness either grows or you try to repair it or you try to do that. So there's a lot of stuff left between Optimus and Megatron to explore.
I wondered that actually, if you would go, and again, I'm sure you can't say exactly, but if you would go kind of the more linear route of like, okay, they're enemies now, or if actually there's still more.
There's more
to mine.
There's much more to mine. And I think if we go all the way to just they're forever enemies and they just can't get their act together in any way or form, then you only have room from a story point of view for probably one more movie. Whereas if you stay in the relationship and let the relationship dynamic drive the movie.
Yeah.
You know, there's 2 or 3 movies then immediately because there's a lot of richness.
That's interesting.
Because you see the quintessons in this movie, for example, and when you first see them, you feel like, oh, those are going to be the main villains. But then obviously it turns out to be Sentinel.
Yeah.
So this sort of feels like for a sequel or a later sequel where they would then come back and their conflict continues with Optimus and
were those naughty quintessons that come back? Trust me on that. You know? Yeah, no, I think we haven't seen the true might of the quintessons either. We saw the queen bee, if you would, and you could see the viciousness of those characters. But now what happens when nobody wants to mine? Yeah. Now what? Yeah. So that's the part we're going to explore for sure from a story point of view, and that's not going to make the quintessons happy.
Yeah.
That's a good point, actually, because we've got all these characters now who are suddenly free to make their own choices, whereas they've had this sort of strict regime previously.
Yeah, and I also think that there's several things in there. It's, Fishburne, when he says, it's not the cog that makes you, it's the spark. Mm-hmm. That tells you that it's a more resilient, it's not about just power, if you would. It's about heart. It's about that sort of things. And I think that's going to be a chance for us to explore as the quintessons get more angry. We'll see how we rise to the occasion.
Interesting. And in terms of potential future of this series, would you see yourself like drawing on other areas of Transformers as well? Because in this one, for example, there's influences from like Transformers Prime, quite clearly, different cartoons from the past. Are there any particular parts of Transformers lore that you would be interested to kind of bring to the table for the future? Or?
Well, the answer is yes, but we don't have that sorted. Yeah. As we begin to just try to build the next movie, that's when we start getting into, all right, well, not how to manipulate the lore, but what lore fits here. Yeah. And that's where the trick really lies in, is trusting the lore and not being entirely doctrinaire at the same time, and, every time we're not entirely doctrinaire, there's a few fans out there like, wait a second. You know? But I believe storytelling needs to evolve forward. And if you do exactly what has been, I don't know what the excitement is about.
I completely agree.
It's like, I always say surprise is the best element of entertainment. Yeah. And so if you're doing it literally the same, I remember in the first movie, people, before they saw the movie, were like, Michael Bay is ruining my childhood. Right? It was real. And by the way, it freaked us out. We're like, holy, what? I'm not, I can imagine. And then of course they come to love the robots in the configuration that came by and large. Thank God. But that's exactly it, is you have to have the guts, or I'll say the sort of philosophy, which I have, which is, no, they're not going to be happy if they look like a 1980s animated cartoon. Right. Yeah. Seriously?
We've seen it already.
You've seen it, and also it's going to feel old and creaky. Yeah. No matter what you do,
It's fascinating because you're right, and there always will be fans that are stuck in one particular part of this 40-year franchise, but it also does need to evolve and change in order to.
If it doesn't, if it doesn't stay up with, I'll say, cinema technique, then it starts feeling like, when did you make that movie? There's a movie or two recently, I won't name them, but I was looking at them, I said, well, those feel like movies that were made in the early 60s. Like, what? Right. What is the tone that they're trying to do? So I think that's where it gets hard, and that's also where the excitement can land for us in trying to create something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The 2007 movie, when that came out, like you say, at first people looked at it and went, it's like that. But when they saw it, like, I remember viscerally being in the cinema being like, whoa. Yeah. Watching there was a feeling transform for the very first time.
Never seen anything like it.
And that's what you need in cinema and any kind of franchise for longevity. So. It has to change as something new. It might put old people off, but it brings new people in. Yeah. But we wouldn't have like this film or any of the things we like about Transformers without that 2007 movie. And for you as a filmmaker, then, how do you feel like this and that? Because this feels like a similar kind of like really exciting refresh of the whole brand again, like the 2007 film did.
Yeah, no, they both have a similar feeling in terms of like, but for me, it goes to the first movie we reduced it to boy gets car gets girl.
Yes. Yeah.
And that the success of that simple thing, and this is two best friends who become mortal enemies.
Right.
Like when you can describe a movie in a sentence or two, I think you're really on strong ground, because that means you're not like, you don't have to explain some, and then they had to travel through space, and then,
that makes sense.
So,
I saw it described as bros become foes, which I thought that really made me chuckle. Yeah.
Exactly. There was definitely that one too, and which made us all chuckles. But what's so interesting about that is you could say that's really simplistic. Yes. And that's why it has a lot of resonance, because you're allowed to build in a way, it's a Christmas tree. Then you're allowed to put a lot of baubles, because that stock is really strong. You don't have to spend a lot of time explaining it.
Yeah.
So you then get to, have a funny Bumblebee character, and you get to have an Alita who's an antagonist, but then becomes part of the team. All the time that allows for.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't have to keep returning to explain the story to the audience, and it's hard to come up with that all the time. Not just in Transformers, in making film. I think it's Spielberg once said to me, every movie's about 5 images. And when you actually look at it, whether it's 5 images, but it's about 5 ideas.
Yeah.
And those images usually encapsulate that idea.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess taking that and I'm aware that we're kind of going to the end, but I was interested to also ask you then about the upcoming G.I. Joe film, which we've seen.
The crossover?
Yeah, exactly. So, I should say yes, the Transformers and G.I. Joe film. And, obviously, the last time we spoke to you as well, you talked a little bit about the sort of, I suppose, the realization for you as a filmmaker that, putting the robots as the priority, if you like, and making them more the characters of the story.
Yeah. Well, I think, sorry.
No. Well, I was just interested how that works when then you're going to have, presumably a split cast with G.I.
Well, it's interesting. I think I, for myself, can't go back. One of the expenses in live action of the robots talking is extraordinary.
Yeah.
So we've always been sort of boxed into really limiting it. And therefore you're almost attaching them to plot then.
Yeah.
Right? Or action. We have no choice, I believe, and now they have to be very rounded. We have to have robot point of view now.
Yeah.
It has to compete with human point of view in the live action. And that's going to be a really interesting, one of the challenges of the crossover is there's going to be 3 major things to do.
Right.
4. One is, how do these 2 worlds come together?
Yeah.
It's one thing if you're a fan and you've read the comic books or whatever. It's another thing for somebody who doesn't, like, why do those 2 things exist together, right?
Yeah.
So you have to find some commonality that explains why these 2, I'll say, cultures are going to mesh. And then the third thing you're adding is the robots have to be more dynamic characters. Okay, where do you have the time to do that? Because we're not going to make a 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
So I think the real challenge is going to be, we're going to start out here with, we need all these Joes and we need all these Transformers. And then we're going, well, maybe not that many. Maybe not that many. Maybe like here.
Yeah.
Which is the process in large respect to almost all large cast movies is, anyone who's done enough of them like I have, you've failed at some point in time.
Yeah.
And you've learned what you did was none of the characters are good enough because you're trying to service too many.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
So it's really and of course then you've got Hasbro believes that we have to have these characters, and Paramount believes you have to have these characters. And then, so there's this sort of push and pull, or I should say tear at the fabric of what it is,
balance to bring.
So what we've got to do is find a way to really bring it in. And so what I don't want people to think in a crossover is you're going to see all the Joe stuff or all the Transformers stuff. You're going to see some of it.
Yeah. The bits that are relevant.
Yeah. Like, I don't know that we'll go to the pit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
But we don't have time for sure in our storytelling to suddenly see, the hierarchy of the Joes, the pit, and then the hierarchy of the...
Yeah, exactly. I guess it's...
You have to tell a story, don't you?
You got to tell a story and try to, center it around 5 or 6 characters. If we can do that, then we'll do a good job.
And forgive me for asking, but do you see it as a continuity, kind of a continuation of Rise of the Beasts and Bumblebee?
There's a really healthy fight going on about it.
Right.
Which I don't know the answer about who's going to win.
Okay, interesting.
Up
for debate.
I favor a reboot.
Okay.
but that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen, because there's a lot of good reasons to make it a sequel. So, I mean, Rise of the Beast was a very entertaining movie and really succeeded. The audience liked it very much. And
because that was a question with that as well, was that a reboot? And there was almost a similar conversation around Bumblebee.
Well, I've never understood how people saw Bumblebee as a reboot, because it was so clearly Optimus comes at the end of that movie as though it's the beginning of the Bay world.
Yeah. And Bumblebee turns into the car from the old film, from the 2007 film.
Exactly. Yeah. So I never understood how they saw it, but we did not see it as a reboot. We saw it as a prequel. And so I think at some time, this isn't a reboot, this movie. This is a new part of the story.
A new story.
That's why I would say I favor a new part of the story as the next movie. It's probably a better way to say it than a reboot.
Okay. So sort of like it's up to interpretation, I guess.
It could be. I mean, again, we're not there yet to declare which direction it's going in.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're out of time from the looks of things, but obviously a big thank you again.
Great to talk to both of you guys.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So, and thank you for continuing to make these films. So,
well, hopefully we won't falter on the next one. So,
yeah. Well, and
hopefully everybody shows up to this one. It's,
hopefully,
This is always the nervous day today.
For sure. I mean, we told you last time, but I've seen it again since and absolutely loved it.
I can't wait to see it again.
Have you seen it in 3D?
No, but I want to. I'm going to take my son.
I will say to you, I am not a 3D. 3D, I'm fine. You know, see this movie in 3D, it blows you away.
Okay.
There's something in the chemistry between this. It's unexplainable to all of us, including the 3D people. Something about this.
Interesting.
The marriage between this and 3D was wow.
Just the visuals and everything. Okay.
Actually, it's the drama.
Okay.
Which that's what caught me off guard.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, fascinating.
So
that's what you wanted from 3D though, always, isn't it? To add to the film, not just be.
Well, and I think the problem with 3D in general is it's been used as a gimmick instead of just as a format.
Yeah.
In a way, right? And people are like, how wide can we make it? We didn't do that.
Yeah.
We kept it through in a very tight, having done 3D before, I don't like the accordion thing that people do.
Yeah, sure.
So we kept it in a pretty tight thing. But what's interesting in the drama scenes, you feel the drama more. Yeah. I can't explain it because all of us were like, whoa. When we first saw the 3D, we were like, what? Cause we were sort of like, oh, you guys wanted 3D? Okay.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, we want it in 3D.
Well, I shall definitely take that recommendation.
Yeah, I see if you've had the same reaction. Everybody who's seen it has said to me the same thing.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's from the man himself. And I do just want to acknowledge that this podcast has taken us to some unexpected places. And sitting down with Lorenzo was certainly chief among them. I will put it that way, you know?
Yeah,
honestly,
great. And Josh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was wonderful. Really nice to chat to them both. And to be invited down on that first press junket as well, and seeing
honoured.
It was
a
real privilege to be part of that as well. And it's great. And Lorenzo's chat that you guys got at the end there as well. It was like I was getting serious FOMO.
Oh mate, I wish you could have been there.
We missed you. I kept imagining you as like a force ghost behind us. You were mad as force ghost.
What I should have done, you should have taken like a Missing Link Prime and like stuck my kind of silly face on it or something like that and go, he's here.
We'll have to special edition you in there somehow.
Like the Anakin version in Return of the Jedi. But it was then hearing it and actually watching it as well, which I did earlier today.
We're on video.
I know the amount of chat that he came out with, and it was lovely because the impression I got, he was genuinely passionate and engaged, and like you said, Sixo, he had a real love for Transformers in what that can be and what it could be, and that coming from a producer, I was like, okay, that's exciting, right?
Yeah.
This potential for creativity, and he was talking about creativity and all that. It was really nice. Really
I got the impression from him as well that he was excited. Well, firstly, excited for this film to be well received, like he really wanted that, but also that he was excited for people to get excited with him and with the other creatives and whatever else. And he was clearly like buzzing on a lot of he kept talking about kind of the learnings from previous films and this kind of stuff. And,
it was good to hear.
I thought it was fascinating chat. Again, we're just so privileged to have that time.
For me, it was being able to talk to two filmmakers, like at the top of the game, really. And just have that in-depth chat about how these movies are made, the motivations, not just Transformers chat. That's kind of almost like secondary. It's like how this was all put together and how it's got here from previous movies, and this kind of journey, and just really,
it's unique,
really,
isn't it?
Just still blown away that we got to do it, and we got to meet Matt Ferguson while we were there. That was quite fun in the first one.
Oh god, his work on
who did the poster for the movie?
Absolutely amazing. Did you see him? There's a photo of him. He posted it the other day, but it's a photo of him on the red carpet. With
Chris
Josh as well.
Hemsworth and his artwork. And, I've met him before, but he's such a lovely guy. Honestly,
what an epic talent!
I met him at DFN.
Yeah, totally. I bought his 86 movie poster, the foil version. It's beautiful.
Yeah. He does outstanding work.
But so just to wrap up then, your final thought on the film. You loved it, yeah?
I absolutely loved it. Great characters, great vibes, brings the feels, has and it's everything I want in a film. Not just a Transformers film, but a film.
We all think this is the best one, don't we?
Yeah. Country mile for me, actually, to be honest.
So to me, I think it's the best, but I also think this is like the best entry point for someone new coming to Transformers. Like if you were going to give them a piece of media now to say, this is Transformers, to someone who'd never seen it, I think this would be the thing to give them
I think
first to watch.
In many ways, yeah.
Do you know, but for me, actually, it's like, rather than me just, look, everyone's going to be ready for me to go and see the Transformers movie. But actually, it's going to be like, go and see this film. It's really good. Yeah. It's a really good film. It doesn't matter if Transformers, it's just a really good film, right?
This sets like a different expectation, I think, for the franchise. For people
it absolutely
coming in.
does.
Yeah,
it's a
exciting.
real neat origin Transformers story in a way that's not really done before.
That's what is. It was in the Lorenzo chat as well, which I loved. Which is this whole idea of all the kids, young people that aren't in Transformers yet, and this is the origin story.
This is their onboarding,
yeah. So it's like I think one of you mentioned, I think it was you, Sixo, was it, that mentioned about like for the prequels within Star Wars, and then how that is people's entry point, and for Transformers to have that now, and when you guys said that, I was kind of just like, oh yeah, it's been done in the comics, but not like this, right?
No,
so that's,
and I think that is what this is for me. At the end of the day, is that we've had these origins told before. It's not that the origin hasn't been told. It's been done in comics, whatever. But what the brand has never had is a kind of, as you said, Liam, a kind of entry point, like a universal entry point. Like if you're brand new, where'd you come in? What's the kind of, if you were going to see one piece of media or experience one piece of media or read one piece of media, whatever, what is that's going to kind of get you in and give you the vibe of what Transformers not just is, but can be, like what it can deliver in terms of exactly, in terms of character, in terms of suspense, in terms of art, in terms of the scope of the world, like the world building and the potential to tell interesting stories that are different. And it's funny because I know you're obviously keen, and you're right to say it's a good film, not just a good Transformers film. But I do also think that there is an element of this film that couldn't be told on Earth. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a very fantastical story that is. It's at its core, it's a Transformers story as well.
It's set in its own universe. Yeah.
It is, and as a starting point, it puts those characters first rather than having to deal with. It's the human perspective. These characters are big and they're in the background almost. They're secondary to your connection to human people. Here it is. These are those characters. They're important.
Yeah, exactly.
Connect to them.
I think what this film will do, and this is kind of like as you were saying, like the Star Wars prequel thing, it's going to change the perception of these characters moving forward. Like Megatron, you can almost, I know that it won't be in the same continuity, and there'll be various different versions of Megatron still ongoing, some of them more heinous than others and whatever else, but particularly for kids seeing this film now first, it's always going to colour every depiction of Megatron moving 100%. Forward, because it's like, and this is what I was saying about the prequels, you can't watch Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes Back now without knowing who's in the suit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
totally.
And having seen him as a little kid and all of that. And it's the same thing with Megatron.
Spoil
now,
it for yourself.
Well, yeah,
exactly.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it brings a whole other layer, though.
Exactly.
And there's fans that are all that's there written, and they love it for that as well. Do you know this film for me is that what I love about it is it comes from the heart, right? And it tells a story as like old as the ages, and it's like one of friendship and loss, and it draws you in on that level.
Yes,
and that is what I love about Transformers 1.
That's fantastic.
Do you know, I think we've been through this whole chat. I don't think we've had one nitpick or negative or anything to say about it, really. And even if you... This is the thing.
Didn't at the time, though, did we? I think we came out.
No.
Like, I don't think... We were trying to... I think we were talking through it, and genuinely there was nothing, about
and there was we had quite a lot of hours before we chatted to Josh and Lorenzo.
Yeah,
as well.
we did. We
chatted.
We sat and chatted about it for hours. Yeah. The thing is, and this is what I want to kind of get across, I suppose, if anything, is that thinking back to those comments, where you say this is the best Transformers film ever and it's really good, and people are like, I don't believe you, and it's so mad because actually I know some people are going to think that we're gassing it up or whatever, or we're just enthused about the new thing,
but we saw it months ago.
This is it. We saw it so long ago now, but
almost half a year.
But for me, honestly, it's not that, because if you sat here and twisted my arm and really cornered me and got me to try to think of something actually negative I could say about it, I would struggle. Is the honest reality of my feelings towards this film.
I've got one thing that I could say.
Oh, here we go. He's in with his
big hater energy.
Big hater vibes. I was just on a lovely point there, Jason. You got to crash it. Come on. What's your thing?
Oh, Jason has to spoil it. Come on.
Yeah, sorry. It ended. That was it.
Oh, that makes me sick, Jason. I preferred it when I thought you were going to come with an actual criticism.
Curveball, hey, there we go.
Good God.
It's a beautiful film.
It is.
And you know what? People don't need to take our word for it, right? They can go and watch it.
They can go and watch it, and they should. They should go and watch it.
Yeah.
I would say to anybody, if you're on the fence about should I see this film or not, yes, you absolutely should go and see it in the cinema.
Go and see it. Enjoy it.
It's
brilliant.
So gorgeous. Well worth it. Go and watch it. Honestly, it is, from all three of us, I've said this, legitimately the best Transformers film, including the 86 movie. All of them, without question.
And you will have your own favourites, and that's fine. We're not doing anything to dismiss your favourites.
No.
I think 86 will always be like a personal favourite, but I would watch this one and go, this is a far better film than that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's it for me as well. The 86 movie is so wedded with nostalgia for me that it's hard to encapsulate everything that did on my brain watching it so many times throughout my youth, so you can't change that. But objectively, this is the best Transformers.
That's it. Yeah. I think the only thing I would say to kind of wrap that up is knife hands. They're my favourite bit. I love it.
I would say people should go and see it, because there's definitely more than meets the eye to this movie.
Oh, God,
there we go.
You can tell we're reaching the end of the recording, can't you? My final thought would be, I hope we get a sequel. Honestly, I will...
Absolutely.
I will bring my vengeance down upon this fandom if we don't, if enough people don't go and see it.
Oh, Jason, now he's talking about himself as some kind of vengeful god.
Exactly.
Oh no, wait, I'm
it's gone to his head.
Oh no, this T16.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to see an unhappy Sixo.
Sixo Sentinel Prime over here.
Yeah, going to see an unhappy Sixo if this thing doesn't do well enough to merit a sequel. Honestly,
I need a Sentinel Prime toy. That's what I need.
I do as well. Yeah, we haven't even talked about him much, but what a character! Just
it's great.
Yeah, really good. Please go and see this film. Please, let's have a sequel.
Oh.
I know, yeah.
There's more to say.
There's so much. We'll revisit this in 6 months' time, right?
I was going to say, I think probably maybe around the home release or something, I don't know, we'll have to do some more on it another time and kind of get into some of the characters and detail that we've not been able to cover tonight. So
I think we're doing well with the guests, so let's start getting some of the cast and crew on for bigger chats.
Yeah, sure, Jason. Easy peasy.
All right. We'll
I'm on IMDb. We'll call Hemsworth and get him in.
I'm an actor on IMDb. That's fine, One degree of separation.
Absolutely, yeah. That's how it works. You get on IMDb and you have everybody's phone numbers,
everyone's email address. That's it. It's the LinkedIn of the movie world.
Yeah, fantastic. But no, do go and see this film, please, and we'll come back and talk about it more another time, I'm sure. But what a film! What a film!
Until next time, legends. Transformers transforming bats in the sky. We won't stand for
Right, well, that's going to about do it for us tonight. We have sort of jettisoned some weight in the form of a lot of our usual stuff that we do. I know, right? I had to get it in. All the kind of usual kind of Patreon questions and things that we do on one of our normal episodes, just for time more than anything. But that will be back with the next episode. And we've got lots of guests and stuff going on at the moment, haven't we? It's really exciting. We've got some big ones coming up as well. We've got Mr. Simon Furman joining us soon as well. So can't wait for that chat. That's going to be exciting. All happening. But if you do want more of this, it's fair to say you should get on our Patreon, which is at patreon.com/Triple Takeover. Loads of extra good stuff on there. So go and check that out. Do it. Maybe we'll do some Transformers 1 chat for there as well. You never know. But otherwise, you can find us on social media. We're on the YouTube. We're on all the socials, all of that kind of stuff. You guys are on social media too, right?
Yeah, man. I'm at Toybox anywhere there's Nat.
I am Jason Wagner. Google autocompletes Transformers now. So I've made it. That's it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just give it Jason. If you do Jason Wagner, it comes up with Transformers at the end of it. So that's it now. Yeah.
Sixo's putting it to the test.
I am Jason Wagner.
Live, I know.
Yeah, it does.
It does. It literally does. My God.
I know. I've made it, guys.
That's so rude. There we go.
Boom.
Nerd.
Your life has been transformed.
It's because I'm posting on TikTok. Also, Transformers Official liked my 40th anniversary little video that I did on TikTok, which was a nice moment. And
they've never liked anything I've done.
I know.
They liked my photo the other day as well, Jason. So.
Are you on TikTok? Are you on TikTok?
No, on the old Instagram.
Oh, on Instagram. Okay.
I've not made it. That's the thing. So
that's it. With your tiny following.
Yeah, exactly. But no, maybe Transformers officially hasn't liked me. But maybe they have. I can't remember.
I think you've done all right with a nice haul.
I've done all right. Yeah, I've done all right. That's pretty good.
Done all right. You do well. Yeah. Where can we find you?
Well, you can find me on the socials. Where you might find the @ symbol.
Everywhere.
I will also be there.
I'm just talking over you.
Let's just 602.
No one wants to hear this.
That's me. But yeah, no. Long story short, we love Transformers 1. Definitely go and see it, please, in cinemas, and let's have a sequel. And otherwise, we'll catch you for the next one.
Twice!